Haunted Love, a paranormal wolf-shifter romance audiobook. Prologue. Most people would probably tell you they'd love nothing more than to find their soulmate, that one person destined to adore them forever, with whom they'd share an instant and effortless connection. It sounds ideal, doesn't it? But is it really? Is being essentially forced by some external power to love one person above all others romantic? I disliked the concept, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Though in the end, that's all it used to be in my eyes. A concept. A vague romantic notion from the movies. Nothing tangible and definitely not an idea I believed in. Just like I didn't believe in wolf shifters either. I hadn't even considered that should soulmates be real and should I, of all people, find mine, he might not even want me. And even though that is precisely what happened, turns out being rejected by your soulmate isn't even the worst part. Because what they don't tell you about soulmate bonds is that they can kill you. This is the story of how I found that out the hard way. Chapter 1. How did I get here? The last thing I know, I was leaving a club after getting into an awful fight with my friend Chloe, and now I'm in an empty corridor, alone. Everything is still and eerily quiet. If it wasn't for the sound of the rain pouring outside, you'd think I'd stepped into another dimension. There's a door at the end of the hallway I feel compelled to reach. I can't explain it. It's like my body's seeking something my mind doesn't yet comprehend. I slip inside a dark, quiet room dimly lit by the moon, which casts a soft, ethereal glow through the large bay window. My eyes slowly adjust to the darkness, and I realize I'm standing in a bedroom, with high ceilings and wooden floors. And there, in the bed, lies a figure. A man. Half covered by a tangled mess of sheets, his chest bare and rising gently with each breath. Even in sleep, there's a strength to him, his features cast in the soft lunar light, revealing a rugged handsomeness that feels familiar yet utterly captivating. Who's this man? What is he doing here? Wait, more importantly, what am I doing here? Shouldn't I do the sensible thing and leave? Something holds me in place and I find myself walking towards the bed instead, heart racing as I try to make out the man's features throughout the darkness. When I do, I can't believe my eyes. I know this man. In fact, I loathe him with every fiber of my being. He's my university professor, and he is the most conceited, demeaning, kind of gorgeous but nevertheless self-satisfied jerk I've ever met in my entire life. No man had ever made me feel as small and insignificant as he did on the day we met. And this is coming from someone whose father left when she was 5. We met on a cold but sunny winter morning. I was just recently back on campus from my holiday break when I met up with my friend Chloe.
Did you have a nice time with your family, Emma?
She asked as we were heading into our university's main building. I mean, I'm sure I would have if I had one, I replied dismissively.
I'm sorry. Are you guys not close?
Chloe's big blue eyes filled with a compassion I didn't want. Stop that. I don't feel sorry for myself and neither should you. The question is, why do you look so chipper, Chloe? I thought you were spending your holidays cooped up with your boyfriend.
I really wished you tried to know him better. I know he's not your cup of tea, but...
I snorted at that. He was the type of guy who believed women couldn't do anything on their own. Especially not Chloe, who he saw as his property. I had no idea what she was doing with him when it was so obvious the guy made her miserable.
I told you before, Emma. Nate and I are destined to be together. He's my...
Yeah, your soulmate, I know, you've said. We entered the university building. I, blissfully unaware I was seconds away from losing my dignity, and Chloe, focused on her whole soulmate voodoo thing. In her mind, she has no choice but to be with this person who keeps hurting her, because it's supposedly, and I quote, meant to be. I just don't see how the universe could pick someone like that for you, Chloe. You deserve to be happy. I stopped mid-sentence as I was handed back the term paper I'd submitted to the PA. An F? I gasped in horror. There must be some kind of mistake.
Maybe the teacher figured out you copied your paper from Ted.
I rolled my eyes. Please, Chloe, Dr. Barnes is so old he instantly forgets what he reads. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. This is an outrage.
About that, Emma. I think Dr. Barnes is not...
Don't move, I won't be long, I told my friend, running off.
Wait, Emma!
I didn't listen. and ran off towards Dr. Barnes's office, prepared to unleash a tirade on that old fossilized relic. He was known to be a very easy grader, which was why I'd decided to enroll in his class in the first place. Why else would I ever sit through lectures about archaeology? I banged on his door in an effort to assert myself.
Come in.
A stern voice echoed through the door. Focused on building up my arguments, I didn't notice it sounded nothing like Dr. Barnes's and barged into his office, freezing in my tracks when I realized it wasn't him sitting behind the desk. Chapter 2. Instead of a receding hairline and a long white beard, I found myself staring at the light brown hair and well-defined jawline of a 30-something young man I'd never seen before in my life.
Yes?
The stranger asked, without looking up from the mess of papers on his desk. You're not Dr. Barnes, I stammered, rather accusingly.
An astute observation. He had to take a sudden leave due to health issues. I'm Dr. Saxe. I'll be substituting for the remainder of the year.
Oh, I replied, feeling rather dumbfounded. He finally decided to look up from his stack of papers, his thundering gray eyes locking onto mine. For a brief moment, I forgot the purpose of my visit, struck by the effortless authority that seemed to radiate from him.
And you are?
He asked, raising an expectant eyebrow. I hurried towards him with renewed purpose. Emma Pierce, I answered, handing him my term paper. I'm here because there's been a mistake with my last grade.
Was there?
Dr. Saxe sounded highly dubious. His tone threw me off a little. Well, his tone and the mocking look he was sending me, so I scratched my throat before bravely trudging on. Yes, Dr. Barnes must have made a mistake because… Dr. Saxe interrupted, grabbing my copy out of my hands to give it a disdainful glance.
You're the student who cheated.
I didn't cheat, I exclaimed, outraged.
Well, seeing how you handed in the exact same work as a Mr. Ted Davis, I'd say one of you definitely cheated, wouldn't you?
I gaped like a fish at a loss for words as Dr. Saxe continued.
As of now, you've both got fails. However, should the person who copied come forward, I'd be willing to rectify the original paper's grade.
He seemed sincere with the opportunity he was presenting me with. Someone could get away with a better grade here. Really, there was only one thing left for me to do. Right, it was Ted. Ted totally copied me. Dr. Saxe couldn't have looked less impressed.
No, he didn't.
He scoffed, giving me my paper back.
You're dismissed.
Dismissed? What about my grade? I protested, waving my paper around. This is going to significantly lower my GPA.
There's a rather easy way you could improve your grade, Ella.
Dr. Saxe sank back in his chair, a ghost of a smirk playing on his lips as if he found my predicament amusing. It's Emma! I snapped, crossing my arms. And, wait, what do you mean by an easy way to improve my grade?
I would think that's rather obvious. Don't you?
The air between us grew heavy. His gaze, laden with implication, caught mine, and I was at a loss for words for a moment. Surely he hadn't meant what I thought he meant. He wouldn't make a pass at me, would he? But then again, his words were inviting, his tone downright suggestive, and seeing the way he was looking at me like he was inches away from pulling me onto his lap and make me pay for my impertinence. My breath caught in my throat as my mind began to race. I wondered what he had in store for me exactly. Would he content himself with just a kiss? The idea of his lips crashing onto mine ran a shiver down my spine, but he didn't seem like the type of man who'd be satisfied with a simple kiss. He'd probably pin me to his desk and…
Miss?
Dr. Saxe asked, looking somewhat confused. I scratched my throat, hoping to hide my anticipation. I didn't want to look too enthusiastic. He was blackmailing me after all. Fine, I said, putting my bag down. Where do you want me? Dr. Saxe's expression remained perfectly impassive, though his body tensed slightly.
What?
Where? What do you want? I batted my eyelashes at him. Or shall I just get down on my knees?
On your…
Dr. Saxe's eyes widened in disbelief, and then he slightly recoiled.
I meant doing extra credit. A chance to redo the assignment.
I felt my heart sink into my stomach from sheer embarrassment. Had I really gotten it wrong? But how? I would have loved nothing more than for the ground to swallow me whole, but I couldn't let it show. Redo the assignment? I scoffed. I'm not about to redo something I already spent hours on. I raised my nose in the air, satisfied by Dr. Saxe's stunned expression.
You're too good for extra credit, yet you offer yourself up to any random stranger?
He asked, raising an eyebrow. I clenched my jaw, feeling my face flush in anger. I hated how he made that sound, like I was something cheap and easily disposable. Well, it would have been way less time-consuming, I reply, feigning to sound just as indifferent as he did.
Get out of my office.
Dr. Saxe snaps, jaw clenched. And that about sums up how he and I met. In the months that followed, my relationship with Dr. Saxe didn't improve much, though my grades did, as there was no way I was going to let that arrogant prick the satisfaction of looking down on me ever again. He'd made me feel so small and insignificant. I now rejoiced in the reluctant looks he'd give me every time he was forced to hand me back a successful test. Though he made a point of always getting my name wrong.
Yes, Mildred. You have a question? Passable work today, Rita. Anybody know an Emma Pierce?
There was no way he didn't remember who I was by this point. That jerk was doing it on purpose. All this to say, the man and I do not get along. This is why being in his room now, and in the middle of the night no less, feels downright illicit. Never mind how I even got there in the first place. Why I haven't made myself scarce yet, now that's the real mystery. I'm unable to tear my eyes away from him, like a new unspoken connection is bridging the gap between us. How can someone so aggravating in the light of day evoke such a storm of warm emotions in me now? I jolt at that last thought and step back, my breath catching in my throat, as the realization of what I'm doing and feeling slowly sinks in. What exactly is happening here? For some unknown reason, I'm in my university professor's room watching him sleep, instead of getting out of there before getting caught, and also trying to figure out how I'd even gotten to his house when I don't even know where he lives. The last thing I remember, I'd convinced Chloe to come out with me. We were supposed to go dancing together. Had we gone? Why can't I remember? Chapter 3. I have to go home. Unfortunately, light comes on outside the bedroom and I hear footsteps coming my way. If I get caught here, I'm dead. The sheer humiliation will likely kill me. I dodge behind a curtain just as someone bursts into the room. It's a tall, beautiful woman with long red hair who's wearing a light silk robe.
Harry, wake up.
Dr. Saxe immediately sits up in bed, looking remarkably composed for someone who barely just woke up.
Viv, what's wrong?
I briefly wonder if Viv is this woman's actual name, one Dr. Saxe actually bothered remembering, before focusing again.
It's Chloe. She needs help.
They're not talking about my Chloe, are they? Why would she need any help from Dr. Saxe of all people? I watch them exit the room before getting out myself, though not before glimpsing into the hallway to make sure I'm alone. Slowly, I make my way towards a couple of voices I can hear arguing a little further down the hall. I'm led to the top of a large wooden staircase at the bottom of which is none other than Chloe collapsed on her knees, in tears. What's going on with her? Did her boyfriend do something? I see him close beside her, an angry scowl on his face.
What happened?
Dr. Saxe asks, placing a hand on Chloe's back. I blink in surprise. Are they actually acquainted? But then why hadn't Chloe ever mentioned that?
Nate!
Dr. Saxe insists, but the guy's busy staring at Dr. Saxe's hand on Chloe, clenching his fist like a child would upon having being denied his candy.
It's her friend,
He mutters reluctantly before shutting his mouth like he's said everything. It's clearly not enough information for Dr. Saxe, though.
Which friend?
You know, the one she met in class? The small, obnoxious brunette who talks too much?
Dr. Saxe's head snaps up.
You mean Emma?
Ah, I knew it. He knows my name. He's suddenly looking a little pale, though. Probably a trick of the light. My thoughts are interrupted by a piercing scream. Chloe's now panting against the floor, face contorted in pain. The redhead looks at her with a worried frown.
Harry, she's going to turn.
What does she mean, turn? What's wrong with Chloe? I hesitate to step out of my hiding place when Dr. Saxe gets her to her feet and drags her off in his arms.
Hey, where are you going? Chloe's my mate.
Her boyfriend protests as he begins to trail after them, but the redhead, Viv, grabs him by the arm.
Enough. Only Harry can help her now. You know this. Tell me what happened.
I already did, Vivian. She's in shock because her friend had an accident.
An accident? Wait, are they still talking about me?
What kind of accident?
Vivian says, sending Nate a pointed look.
She got hit by a car on her way out of the club she and Chloe were at. Don't look at me like that. I had nothing to do with it.
Hit by a what? That can't be true. I'd remember if I'd been in an accident, right? A vague impression of fear, the distant sound of yelling as I'm dragging Chloe on a street in the rain, echoes in my mind. I'm confused, too confused to stay hidden any longer. Embarrassment be damned, I have to know what's happening here. I get out of my hiding space and make my way downstairs. Look, I don't know what Nate deal is, but I obviously wasn't in any accident. As you can see, I'm right here doing just fine, so... I interrupt my speech when it becomes obvious neither Nate nor Vivian are paying attention to a word I'm saying. They're continuing their conversation like I'm not even there. Rude much. Why are you pretending I had an accident? I'm right here. I try again, waving my hand in front of Nate's face. But Nate doesn't bother to acknowledge me in the least. Though neither does little Miss Viv over there, which is worrisome. It's like they can't even see me. Things quickly escalate to downright terrifying when, as I try to catch Nate's attention by grabbing his shoulder, I find my hand going right through him, like it would through air. I'm stunned in place. Am I dreaming?
Let's go wait in the living room.
Vivian says, though her voice seems to reach me from miles away. I feel like I can't breathe. What is happening to me? I throw myself in front of them, trying to block their path, but they pass through me like I'm nothing more than a wisp of smoke, their bodies chillingly insubstantial as they intersect with mine. It's like they never even touched me in the first place. I can't stay here any longer. I need to find someone, anyone, who can explain what's happening to me. Questions circle in my mind, each one feeding into my growing terror. My feet carry me outside the mansion, its vastness giving way to the wilder scenery of the woods that border the property. I don't even think about where to go. I begin to run straight ahead without looking back. Inside the forest, the branches seem to reach out to me, an eerie dance of shadows and moonlight. I can't feel the cold of the night air. The ground beneath my feet feels non-existent. I am moving, yes, but it's as if I'm floating, untethered from the earth. Like I'm there, but not. My heart races, pounding against my ribcage. Am I dead? Is this some sort of limbo? A place between worlds where I'm doomed to wander alone? The thought brings a fresh wave of anguish that threatens to swallow me whole. What will I do if no one else can see me either? Tears stream down my face as the weight of my situation settles in. I am more alone than I have ever been in my life. I might never feel the warmth of a hug or see someone smile at me again. How can I find my way back from this? Will I wake up to find this was all a nightmare? I know this feels too real to be a dream. I close my eyes, trying to think about my next move. I should go to my dorm room on campus and start from there. I get up, but find that each new step I take is more draining than the next. I feel like I'm underwater fighting against the current, an invisible force pushing back as I try to advance. And then, for a brief instant, there's a tug, and it feels like I'm falling off a ledge, being pulled by gravity. The forest around me dissolves into the dimly lit confines of a familiar bedroom I left but an hour ago. My heart skips a beat, not just from the sudden change in scenery, but from the sight of Dr. Saxe, fully awake this time, pinned down on his bed by a half-naked brunette. 1,000 thoughts cross my mind at once, such as how did I get here, and most importantly, who the heck is this skank sucking on my professor's tongue? The urge to push her off of him makes me lose my focus for a minute. I've probably been staring at them for too long to be socially acceptable. It's not like they'll ever know, but still. The woman's straddling his hips now, one hand roaming over his bare chest while the other is busy unzipping his jeans. I'm drinking in every detail, like how her breath hitches as his lips brush against her neck. I have a much prettier neck, I can't help but think, feeling slightly desperate. It could be my imagination, but I get the feeling she is enjoying this much more than he does. I smirk. He may have rejected my advances, but I'm confident Dr. Saxe would be infinitely more vocal if he was with me instead. However, when his guest lowers her hand below the waist of his pants and pleasure strikes his features, it's like a brutal punch to the gut. I try to take a long, calming breath, exhaling loudly in its wake, but I freeze in shock as Dr. Saxe's head snaps up. His eyes lock onto mine, widening in an expression I've never seen him wear before. I feel like I can't breathe. He can't actually see me, right? How embarrassing would it be if he could actually see me?
What the? Emma?
Oh my God, he can. Chapter 4. Dr. Saxe's head snaps up.
Emma?
He blanches, expression a complicated mix of disbelief, stupor, and perhaps relief? Could he be a little happy to see me?
What are you doing here?
Yeah, probably not. He moves away from his lover so suddenly that she topples down on the bed with a cry that he barely seems to register. For a moment, I'm too stunned to speak. After everything, the confusion and the haunting isolation, he can see me. I'm so happy I could kiss him. Well, my words get stuck in my throat. I don't even know where to begin. You see, But then Dr. Saxe's girlfriend, who's looking confusedly in my direction, turns to him with a concerned frown.
Harry?
She asks, sounding hesitant. He royally ignores her.
Chloe said you were in an accident. Was that some sort of joke?
I blink, stunned by the accusation lacing his words. What am I supposed to say? I don't have an explanation for this. Also, I could be in shock for all he knows. And here he is, coming at me like I owe him an apology or something. The nerve.
Emma.
He presses, annoyingly expectant like the entitled prick he is. I don't know, okay? I can't remember what happened. I try to concentrate on the last thing I remember before waking up here. But there is nothing but a black void and fear. I remember being scared, the sound of my heart drumming in my ears. I ran and ran. Someone's hand in mine. Chloe's. I'm not sure. I think Chloe and I went out. I begin to explain. But something went wrong, and suddenly I'm in your room.
What?
Dr. Saxe looks stunned, but I ignore him and continue. Vivian comes in, being all like, Harry, help!
I'm sorry, you've been here before?
Not important. Anyway, the next thing I know, Chloe's crying, her boyfriend's calling me obnoxious, and then, whoosh, he just goes right through me. I try to mimic the entire scene with my hands in what I believe to be a very clear recreation of the events. But according to Dr. Saxe's dumbfounded expression, he's not catching on. To be fair, that is quite a lot to process. Though if I'm handling it like a champ, which I am, surely he could make a little effort. I open my mouth to tell him so when I suddenly find myself at the end of a withering look.
Do you have any idea how worried Chloe was?
He asks, clenching his fists like he's trying to restrain himself from strangling me. Yes, actually, because if you'd been paying attention to anything I'd said, you'd know that
She thought you died, Emma. And you're telling me you were there this entire time? Why didn't you say anything?
Dr. Saxe looks absolutely livid. I just told you, I tried. But no one could see me before. It looks like you're the only one who can—
Enough. This is ridiculous. Just go.
Harry? Dr. Saxe is forgotten about for a minute there, waves a hand in front of his eyes. Geez, lady, intrude much? I snap, annoyed. But she doesn't register my presence, staring intently at Dr. Saxe instead.
Who are you talking to?
What do you mean? To her, obviously.
He says, pointing towards me. His girlfriend is looking at him like he's grown a second head, which is kind of hilarious. See? I tell him, crossing my arms. I told you, she can't see me. His face decomposes, going from doubt to shock. Something akin to horrified realization in his eyes. He shakes his head, probably involuntarily. I'd almost pity him if he wasn't such a gigantic twat.
Look, Zoe, I hate to do this, but you're going to have to go.
Dr. Saxe attempts to convince his lady friend that he is not insane but needs to be alone. Once she's gone, which takes a while, he finally deigns to look at me again. Well? I ask, crossing my arms expectantly. Do you believe me now? I can't believe he even doubted me for a second when I'm the picture of honesty. He better come up with the best apology of his entire life.
I need a drink.
He groans instead, looking around his bedroom like a waiter is suddenly going to appear out of nowhere. Oh, well, yippee for you, I reply sarcastically. Shall I make you a freaking margarita?
Why would I want a margarita?
He gives me an incredulous look.
They're awful.
Who cares? Dr. Saxe, I'm a ghost. I literally go through people, and you're the only one who can help me.
Me? What am I supposed to do?
I don't know. You're the one with the fancy degree here. Figure it out. I can't stay like this. I'll die of boredom.
Hate to break it to you, sweetheart, but you're probably already dead.
Dr. Saxe replies, looking more troubled over the fact than I'd thought he'd be. This gives me pause for a moment. Am I dead? Was this it for me? I can't be, I exclaim, feeling slightly desperate. I've got loads of important things I still need to do.
Like what?
Dr. Saxe gives me an uncharacteristically concerned look. Well, for starters, I'm supposed to go to a Taylor Swift concert next month.
A concert? Really?
He rolls his eyes. I take it you're not a Swiftie then. I sigh as I contemplate the tragedy that is my fate. Why is it that only Dr. Saxe, out of all people, is the one who can see me? He is the literal worst, and he can't stand me. Wait, he can't stand me. That's good. I can work with that. Well, Dr. Saxe, you're going to have to learn how to raise people from the dead, because if you don't, I'm going to haunt you for the rest of your days, starting now. I scratch my throat and begin to sing a beautiful rendition of Wildest Dreams, which Dr. Saxe doesn't seem to appreciate.
Stop it.
So you'll help me then? I ask with a toothy grin I sure hope annoys him to death.
I'll try. Now get out of my room.
What? I blink at him in shock. You just said you'd...
In the morning.
He interrupts, rolling his eyes.
It's the middle of the night.
I'm not tired.
Well, I am.
Dr. Saxe replies, gesturing towards the door. What am I supposed to do in the meantime? I pout.
I don't care, as long as you don't do it here. Good night.
And on that note, he slams his door in my face, which is unnecessarily dramatic, seeing how I could easily walk back through it. But Dr. Saxe said he'd help me, and for now, he's my best chance at figuring this out, so better not antagonize him any further tonight. Chapter 5. Since I don't need to sleep, I roam the halls of Dr. Saxe's enormous home for a little while, before deciding I better make more use of this free time. Earlier, when I'd try to go back to the dorms, I'd been transported back in the house. What was that about? Am I tied to this place for some reason? I want to find out. I make my way back down, encountering a man and a little girl as I pass a kitchen who don't seem to notice me either.
What did we say about sneaking off at night?
The man teases. He looks too young to be the girl's father, which probably explains the joking tone. Besides, looking at the pair more carefully, it is clear they aren't related. The man is a blonde with clear blue eyes and looks like he could play a Viking in some historical romance, while the girl's deep brown eyes and dark locks would probably stand out like a sore thumb amongst the Nordics.
Whatever. You sneak out all the time.
Yeah, well, I'm allowed. I'm an adult.
Barely. Harry says mentally you're 12.
Yeah, but mentally. Harry's like a gazillion years old, so what does he know?
The man puts his arm around the girl's shoulder. She looks a little nervous now.
You won't tell him I went out, right, Jake?
The man, Jake, pretends to think about it.
Tell you what, I won't tell Harry, but if I catch you one more time, I'll tell Vivian.
What? But she already hates me.
She does not. She just has a resting bitch face.
I wonder just how many people live in this house as I watch the pair climb up the stairs, out of earshot. I make a mental note to ask Dr. Saxe about it later and head outside. I take my time walking around the house, its structure even more imposing than I'd previously thought, with its ivy-covered stone walls and dark-looking windows that speak of an age long past. Its proximity to the forest adds to the otherworldly feel of the property, though, despite being an impressive estate, I don't notice anything particular during my exploration. Save perhaps for a couple of tombstones, hidden a little further down the path between the house and the woods. Some seem quite old, but a more recent one made of lighter stone attract my attention, especially when reading the engravings. Cassandra Hargrove, beloved sister, wife, and mother. Below hers is another name that reads Sebastian Saxe, and underneath that a small inscription in gold, True-mates. I frown. While the woman's name doesn't ring any bells, the man had probably been related to Dr. Saxe, though this isn't what particularly intrigues me. My eyes get stuck on the word mates. It's nothing I've ever read on a tombstone, but I guess every family have their pet names and terminologies. When I've covered most of the grounds, confirming the place is completely isolated, I walk back to the forest. I must have been walking for a good 20 minutes when that tugging sensation I felt before awakens, and once again, the forest dissolves into Dr. Saxe's bedroom. Though this time, instead of reappearing by his desk, I find myself lying on his bed, nothing short of stunned. How come I sometimes go through objects, like with doors, and sometimes not? I can feel the weight of a mattress underneath my back, though all my interrogation evaporates once I realize how close I am to Dr. Saxe's sleeping face. I jump in surprise, having momentarily forgotten that of course he'd be here, in his bed. Why do I keep ending up in his bedroom? Does the universe want me to watch him sleep or something? He does look much more agreeable when he's asleep, though, I guess. I gasp in surprise as the man suddenly shifts, moving his arm so that his hand lands right on top of mine. I dumbly blink at it, feeling the heat of his skin seep onto mine. Our hands are touching, like they're in actual contact. "Dr. Saxe," I exclaim, not daring to move or look away from this small miracle. "Dr. Saxe, wake up." The man takes an awfully long time to stir, slowly blinking awake. His gray eyes fall onto me, and for a moment he gives me a surprisingly soft look, which kind of makes me forget what is happening. He really is quite a beautiful man. His eyes are an extraordinary dark gray. But then,
What the hell are you doing in my bed?
yeah, that's more like him. I don't care though, I'm too excited. "Look," I exclaim, grabbing onto his fingers. "We're holding hands."
Get out of my room!
But-
Out!
Chapter 6. I wait for Dr. Saxe to emerge a few hours later, looking unfairly good for someone who didn't get nearly enough sleep, and we discuss our next course of action. Well, he discusses. Meanwhile, I desperately try to make contact with him again, to no avail.
I'll head to the nearest hospital. They'll probably have some information about your accident.
He tells me, glancing over his shoulder to make sure nobody's around. "Why isn't it working?" I cry out, watching my hand go through his arm for the 5th time. "Maybe I can only touch your hand." "Dr. Saxe, give me your hand,"
Will you stop?
the man snaps, moving away. "Give it to me, or I'm singing," I warn.
Oh, for the love of... Fine.
He extends his hand. I try to grab onto him, but my fingers dissolve around his, and I'm suddenly feeling very cold and adrift. Why isn't it working? It did before.
Damn, Marion. If I'd known you wanted to hold my hand this badly, I would have given it to you a long time ago.
I glare at him, disappointment replaced with familiar aggravation. "It has nothing to do with your hand, and stop calling me weird names."
Will do. Now come on, Eileen.
I grind my teeth as I have no choice but to trail after him, though I'm left with the urge to smack his head. "I don't think I can leave your house," I explain to him once we get to his car. "Every time I do, I'm transported right back to your bedroom."
You mean you can't come with me? What a shame.
A pleased smile spread across his lips. There's something seriously wrong with this man for not only disdaining Taylor Swift but also my delightful company. I give him the finger as he drives off before returning inside. I want to check on Chloe, even though I don't know where to find her. I look around a couple of rooms, including an office and a gigantic library, before making my way to what seems to be the dining room. To my surprise, 10 different people are sitting around the widespread table for breakfast. Amongst them Nate, Jake from the night before, the girl Max, and...
Vivian, where's Harry?
Nate says as the redhead makes her way to the table.
"He won't be joining us this morning. Please eat."
I notice everyone had been staring silently at their plate when they all pick up their forks at the same time after being told to do so.
What's he up to anyway? It's Sunday. He doesn't have class.
Jake asks, helping himself to some bacon that looks unfairly delicious. Vivian shrugs, taking a sip of orange juice.
"He's gone into town to check on one of his students."
Really?
Jake drops a piece of bacon.
She pretty?
"She's Chloe's friend, Jake."
So that's a yes.
Vivian scowls but then schools her features into a more neutral expression.
"I wouldn't know. You'd have to ask Chloe."
Is Chloe okay?
She'll be fine, Max.
Jake pats her on the head.
Then why isn't she eating with us? Sunday is family brunch day.
Family brunch? So are all these people family? Wait, does that make Harry and Chloe family? She never once mentioned that little detail to me before.
It's all that bitch's fault.
Nate suddenly bangs the table, making everyone jump, including me.
I told Chloe not to get close to some human.
"Nate, that's enough."
But you agree, right?
Nate says, looking around the table.
There's a reason we keep amongst ourselves.
Harry said it was okay for her to make friends.
Max sighs.
I want to make normal friends.
I'm confused. Why wouldn't she be able to make friends? Maybe she's being homeschooled or something? But what does she mean by normal? Jake looks like he's about to reply when I feel a familiar tug pulling at me and the living room snaps out of view to reveal a busy parking lot. The sound of an ambulance in the distance tells me the massive building by my right must be the hospital. Why am I here?
Renee, what are you doing here?
A familiar voice comes up from behind me.
I thought you were supposed to stay at the house.
Dr. Saxe walks over to me looking really aggravated. It isn't my I reply feeling defensive. I don't decide where I go. I pause thinking back on the conversation I just witnessed. So Dr. Saxe, what's up with your weird family? He stops in his tracks, startled.
Have you been roaming around?
Well, what did you expect, that I stay in your room?
Yes, actually. You spend a suspicious amount of time there.
I roll my eyes. Are you in like a cult or something? I ask, changing the subject. Are you the cult leader?
Of course not.
Weirdly enough, the man seems to relax at that, like he was expecting me to accuse him of something worse. He's hiding something, though, but he doesn't give me any room to ask more questions and head straight for the hospital's main entrance.
You coming or what?
Anticipation builds inside me. Am I about to find out what's happening to me? Chapter 7. After Dr. Saxe makes some inquiries at the front desk, we're taken through a long, deserted corridor lit with bright artificial lights, into a small room with only one bed. There, hooked onto different machines that seem to beep aimlessly, is my prone form, lying unconscious.
She has multiple fractures, but most importantly, a severe head injury.
What they're saying seems subdued, like I'm hearing it from underwater. It feels strange to watch myself lie there in a hospital bed, a literal out-of-body experience. My mind has trouble processing, especially with how awful my body looks, bruised and beaten.
Do we know when she's going to wake up?
Dr. Saxe asks, sounding grim. I wonder if he's worried about me, or at the prospect of being stuck with me for all eternity.
It's hard to say for now. Could be days, weeks.
But she will wake up eventually, right?
We don't know that for sure. I'm sorry.
I don't want to hear this anymore, but I can't seem to make myself move. The nurse must exit the room at some point, though I can't say when that is for certain. My face looks eerily swollen and kind of bluish. It's an awful thing to watch, yet I can't seem to look away.
I'm sorry, Emma.
Dr. Saxe's voice brings me back into focus. I open my mouth ready to snap at him, but his sincere expression startles me. He looks worried and perhaps even a little sad for me.
The doctors will know more in a couple of days. You can't lose hope yet.
I let out a disheartened laugh. Do they know what happened to me?
Just that you were hit by a car. The driver's been arrested.
He says this coldly, though I can tell his ire's not directed at me for once. His gaze makes me feel self-conscious. I can't help it. Tears begin to stream down my face. Dr. Saxe makes his way over to me, clearly uncomfortable, though I can't blame him.
This isn't over. We'll figure something out.
I nod, stubbornly avoiding his gaze. I don't want him to notice the tears, which is stupid because he probably has. But somehow, meeting his eyes now, when I'm feeling so lost and alone, feels like it's too much. I haven't cried since I was 8, and my mom left me alone on my birthday to go on a last-minute trip with her latest boyfriend, who I can't even remember the name of. Was it Sam? No, Sam came later. Anyway, I don't want Dr. Saxe to think I cry easily because I don't.
Would you like me to call someone for you?
I hear him ask through the rush of blood in my ears. It takes a second for me to process his question. Call someone? Why? I ask, shrugging my shoulders in confusion. Who would you even call? Dr. Saxe gives me a strange, assessing look.
Well, a family member, maybe.
He suggests, like it's a rather obvious thing to think of.
Your mother?
Call my mother? What a strange idea. Though I guess his family seems friendlier than mine, so I guess he'd probably want them to know if he'd been in an accident. Nah, I laugh a short laugh. Haven't spoken to her in years.
Oh.
Dr. Saxe's expression does something complicated.
And your father?
Not in the picture.
Well, what about an aunt, or…
Look, no need to list the entire damn tree here, okay? I explain quietly. I don't have a family.
I see.
Dr. Saxe nods. No visible judgment or pity on his face, which I appreciate.
A boyfriend, perhaps?
Nope.
A friend?
Chloe's my only real friend, and she already knows. The quasi-total absence of anybody meaningful being part of my life hits me like a ton of bricks. Guess it takes falling into a coma to realize you're all alone in the world. Well, that's not entirely true, I've always known. I just didn't think I cared much. Yeah, so I guess no one will miss me. I give Dr. Saxe a tight, tearful smile. Something, right? Our eyes meet again. His are wide with something I can't name.
That's not true.
He protests.
I mean, I would.
He scratches his throat.
Chloe would miss you, but she won't. Because we're going to fix this.
Chloe would miss a small ant, I joke, though not particularly joyfully. There's a small silence.
I'd miss you.
Dr. Saxe suddenly confesses. My breath hitches, and then there's no holding back my tears any longer. They flood out of my eyes like a dam's been opened. With them comes a strange sense of relief. Dr. Saxe looks panicked at the sight, though. Without thinking, he moves to place a comforting hand on my shoulder, which I suddenly feel, warm and solid against my skin. Oh, I exclaim through my tears. It's happening again.
Good.
Dr. Saxe says, sounding relieved. And then, he pulls me towards him to wrap his arms around me and I feel alive again, flushed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I don't know how long this will last and I'm not proud of it, but I seize the opportunity to cry into his shirt. Who knows when I'll be able to receive physical comfort next? Dr. Saxe gets a call a little while later, interrupting our hug, I guess. It dawns on me that I've been letting my college professor hug me for the last 10 minutes, and perhaps that means something. I mean, sure, I felt distressed, and he's the only person that can be there for me. But I'm not usually this tactile. And yet, I have to admit, I may have really enjoyed being in his arms. Maybe he's not as annoying as I thought he was. Maybe.
All right, Margaret, we have to go.
Never mind, he totally is. Go? We can't leave. I protest, following behind him in the hallway. Dr. Saxe, hold up! He pulls out his phone again, pretending to have a conversation through there while talking to me.
You know, you can call me Harry.
Your name is Harry? I gasp, secretly pleased. And you can't leave. The doctors are supposed to give you more information about me.
Ever heard of phones? Besides, something's come up. I'm needed elsewhere.
I'm outraged. If he receives news about my health over the phone, I won't be able to hear what my doctors have to say directly. And maybe he's not as bad as I thought, but I'm not about to entrust Harry with key information about my well-being. I haven't relied on anybody since I left home at 16, and I'm not about to start again today. Oh, I'm sorry. Is your girlfriend's feeling lonely? I ask sarcastically. We're in the parking lot now. Harry's decidedly walking towards his car, undeterred by my protests.
No, actually, it's...
Whoever just called you surely isn't brain dead, I interrupt, stomping my feet. So can we please focus on what's important?
You mean you?
Harry deadpans as he gets into his car. I follow him inside. Well, yes, actually. I mean, I'm right, aren't I? Surely the gravity of my situation takes precedence over anything else going on in his life.
I know this may seem hard to believe, Joanna, but the world doesn't revolve around you.
Okay, can we address the real issue here? Harry sends me a sideway glance.
The real issue?
I know you don't like me very much, but...
This isn't about me liking you or not.
He grits out through his teeth. So you agree, you don't like me?
You are incredibly childish.
I'm childish? I ask, raising my voice. I've been trying to remain calm and rational, but he makes that near impossible. You've been antagonizing me since the day we met.
What? You're the one who's always arguing with me.
Because you're an insufferable prick.
And you're a selfish brat.
Our eyes meet briefly and I freeze, my heart picking up in my chest. Instead of their usual gray for a brief moment, I could have sworn Harry's eyes turned gold. A bright, dangerous gold which glows behind my eyelids still, as I try to catch my breath.
Emma, what's wrong?
Harry asks a little grudgingly. I ignore him. This unusual golden color. I've seen it before. I'm sure of it. I remember dangerous eyes fixing me, hands coming at me, an inhuman growl. It was the night of the accident. At the club, I'd gone to the bathroom with Chloe and her boyfriend cornered us. That's right. I remember now. Nate was there. He was angry with Chloe, calling her a bunch of awful names. I got angry. I pushed him off of her. And then he grabbed my arm, but his fingers, they had claws. His eyes turned this terrifying shade of gold. I gasp. I remember Nate growling at me. His head snapped and then he began to change. His bones were breaking, fur grew on his skin. I grabbed Chloe's hand and pulled her behind me. I couldn't believe what I'd seen, thinking someone must have spiked our drinks. I'm calling the police. I remember rambling as we exited the club. We need help, But Chloe was grabbing me, begging me not to, claiming I didn't understand. You saw him, right? I asked her, panicked. There was something wrong with him. It's like he was some kind of animal or something. Chloe began to cry, arguing no one would believe me. But it's not just me. Chloe, you saw him too, right? He's dangerous. She shook her head. Her eyes were filled with fear and sorrow.
I didn't see anything.
She was going to deny it, protect Nate despite what she'd seen. I was so shocked I took a step back and then,
Emma!
Harry shouts, snapping me out of my trance. I jerk away from him even though there's very little he can do to me while driving. Nate, Chloe, Harry. They're all in on it, aren't they? Harry's eyes flashed gold too. Does that mean... I gulp, not daring to meet his eyes. Harry, are you a werewolf? Chapter 8. Harry and I sit in silence as he drives us to wherever we're going. Him gripping the wheel, jaw clenched, and I staring blankly into space. I feel almost stupid for asking my question now. He must think I'm insane. I mean, it sounds insane. Werewolves don't actually exist outside the realm of books or films, though I guess until recently that's what I thought about ghosts as well. Until I turned into one, so...
Yes.
Harry says, eyes fixed on the road. I blink, unsure what he means until I realize he's answering my question. Yes? I ask, just to make sure.
Yes.
Harry confirms, with a small nod, tone blank. Right. Right. So he's a werewolf, that's... cool. I'm fine with that. This isn't weird. And what about Nate? I ask in a small voice.
Him too.
Chloe?
Also.
Vivian? Harry gives me an annoyed glance.
Let's just assume all the people you've seen around my home are wolves.
Meaning you can all turn into wolves. Actual... wolves. I snap my mouth shut, stunned. This is crazy. How's this my life? 2 days ago, I was still a normal, albeit brilliant student.
Debatable.
Shut up. I'm thinking out loud.
Right.
So now I'm a ghost, and the only person who can see me is a werewolf.
We don't actually use that term.
Still thinking, I snap.
Sorry.
My best friend's also a werewolf. Wolf shifter? Whatever the term is. And so is... Nate, I exclaim. I suddenly remember how this whole realization came to me in the first place. I remembered my accident and who, inadvertently, had caused it. It was none other than Nate. He attacked Chloe and I and began to transform in front of my eyes. I panicked and...
Nate did what?
Harry barks, sounding murderous. I don't feel intimated, though. I know his anger isn't aimed at me. He attacked us, I repeat as the images come back to me. He was threatening Chloe, and when I interfered, he became more and more aggressive and started to turn. Harry grips the wheel even tighter than he did before.
That's expressly forbidden.
He grinds out between his teeth. By who? I ask curiously. I didn't know werewolves had laws. To be fair, a minute ago I didn't know they existed, so...
By me.
Harry replies like this is a perfectly ordinary answer. Oh, so you're like some big wolf boss? I joke. But Harry's dead serious as he answers me.
They're supposed to report it if something like that occurs. I knew something was wrong, but...
Chloe's dead set on protecting him, though, I interrupt, annoyed. I can't believe her. It's like he can do no wrong in her eyes. Whatever he does, it's always, you don't understand, Emma. Nate and I are soulmates. I sigh. All the hurt I felt when my friend had once again chosen her awful lover over me, over herself, comes back to mind.
I'm not defending her actions.
Harry says, somewhat reluctantly.
But you must understand, it's difficult to go against a soulmate bond. Chloe must be torn apart. I didn't realize it was this bad.
Wait. I search his expression for any trace of humor but find none. Are you saying this is real as well, the whole soulmate thing? Harry nods.
Very. Finding one's mate is quite rare, but once formed, the bond is considered sacred by our kind.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. I've got so many questions. So, if it's not immediate upon meeting, how does it form?
Typically, once you'd recognize your soulmate, you'd give them a bite mark to settle the bond.
How romantic. I comment sarcastically. Harry smirks.
Chloe could explain all of this better, but the bond supposedly binds the souls together on a spiritual level, which explains why they'd both be protective of each other.
Except in Nate's case, he isn't being protective, he's being controlling. I argue, picturing all the times I've seen him boss Chloe around.
Yes, I suppose a bond doesn't change someone's nature.
I sigh. The universe has essentially doomed Chloe with a psycho. This whole mate thing sounds like one big scam to me. Being tied down to someone you didn't choose for the rest of your life? Having no agency on who you love? That sounds awful. Wait, do you have a soulmate? I ask Harry, immediately regretting it. It's none of my business if he does, and it's not like I care. Why did I even ask him that? I bite my lip nervously, something I haven't done in years.
I guess, though there's very little chance I'll ever meet them.
Harry replies dismissively.
Like I mentioned, finding one's fated mate is incredibly rare. We tend to choose our mates instead.
I let out the unconscious breath I'd been holding, oddly relieved for reasons I'm not going to think about now, if ever. Harry, thankfully, doesn't notice.
If Nate attacked you, that gives me ground to banish him from our pack. Something I've been wanting to do for quite a while.
Explains. You could do that? Kick him out?
I could and I would. But since Chloe's his mate, she'd be inclined to go with him.
I gasp. Until now, Chloe and Nate have been living with Harry and the rest of their pack, which, from what I gathered, has its own set of rules. They all live together, so if something were to happen, Chloe'd be protected. But if she'd be on her own with him, I conclude, disheartened. This can't happen. Isolated with someone who's always bringing her down and intent on keeping her locked up, Chloe would wither away. I wish I could do something to help, but is there really no way to break this bond?
Chloe or Nate would have to reject the other as their mate.
Harry explains, making a turn as the car arrives into town.
But it's unlikely to happen. Rejecting one's mate is incredibly painful for a wolf. The rare ones who do rarely survive the separation.
But it can be done, I insist, trying to focus on the positive. We just have to convince her.
We'll need to convince her not to make a bigger mistake first.
Harry says somberly as he parks his car.
We're here.
Chapter 9. Grimwood is a small, touristy town built close to the university campus I'd often been encouraged to go visit. But if there's in fact a quaint charm to its cobblestone streets and boutiques, I'm too nervous to appreciate it as I take in my surroundings. Besides me, Harry is looking around for someone. Not just anyone. My best friend. So what are we stopping Chloe from doing? I ask, curious. Receiving no response, I begin looking around for her myself, and soon enough, I spot her small frame exiting a bookshop. There! I point, following Harry as he goes to intercept her. Chloe looks awful. She's pale, and there are dark circles under her red-rimmed eyes that didn't used to be there before. That said, she seems determined and assured, even when she notices Harry coming her way.
You're too late,
She tells him with a defiant raise of her chin. Harry doesn't look very impressed, though.
Tell me you didn't.
I did. I requested a meeting with her.
So you haven't spoken together yet?
Harry sighs, seemingly relieved. Who are they talking about?
But I will, tomorrow. It's decided.
You will not.
Harry growls in a commanding tone I've only rarely seen him use.
You have nothing to bargain with.
Chloe seems to deflate a little bit at that.
What happened to Emma was my fault. I'll fix it. I don't care what it takes.
I'm touched by Chloe's concern, though I still have no idea what's going on. Who is she supposed to be seeing?
Not like this. It's too dangerous, Chloe.
If not for me, Emma wouldn't have gotten hurt. I put her in danger. It's only fair I get her out of this.
By making a deal? I don't think so. You have no idea what you're in for with that witch.
A witch? So now there are witches too? What's next? Fairies?
If she can save Emma, I don't care what it costs.
And what if it costs Emma?
Harry objects, crossing his arms.
Witches don't offer fair deals. You don't know what the consequences will be, nor who will be paying them.
Chloe's expression crumbles, along with the small hope I'd felt upon hearing she might have found a way to help me.
However,
Harry says, with a considering look.
I could try speaking with the witch instead.
I'm surprised to hear him say that after he just explained how dangerous deals are. Also, I'm surprised he'd go through such trouble for me. He's probably eager to get rid of me. It's not like he enjoys having me around all the time. And while I might not be a big fan of our situation either, I'm suddenly offended at the idea that he might want me gone. How dare he? I'm a delight.
I have something she'll be interested in.
Harry continues to explain. Chloe looks thoughtful.
Why don't you just let me do it? I don't want to get you in trouble, Harry. Not only is all of this my fault, but the pack needs you. Whereas
I'll go.
Harry puts his hands on Chloe's shoulder.
You're under my responsibility, Chloe.
Even though it's clear she doesn't like it, my friend ends up agreeing with a reluctant nod. So, I guess we're meeting a witch then. That should be interesting. Chapter 10. With nothing left to do in town, we all head back home. During the car ride, Harry and I agree we shouldn't tell Chloe about my ghost situation, since she is feeling so guilty about what is happening already. I'm unconvinced at first, but Harry argues this could make her unstable.
Chloe started to turn when she was 15, which is rather late. She's always had trouble managing her powers. She's been doing much better, but with everything that's happened lately, we should keep her out of this for now.
I don't want to add to Chloe's plate, but I would have liked to let her know I didn't blame her for my accident. Once we arrive home, it feels natural to follow her to her bedroom to make sure she's okay. She stays in there for a good hour, staring into space while looking small and miserable. I would have left, except it feels too much like I'm abandoning her. I try talking to her and even touching her, but nothing works. It seems whatever ability Harry has isn't a general wolf thing. Hopefully the witch will be able to tell us more. I just hope nothing bad happens to Harry in the process. As my thoughts drift towards him, something strange happens. Even though I haven't seen him in an hour and don't have the faintest idea what he's currently doing, I suddenly have the startling sensation that I know exactly how he's feeling. Namely, angry. Tension coils in my chest in response, a reflection of his own emotions. The source of his ire is a mystery to me, though it's directed at someone, that much is clear. A sudden rush of protectiveness swells within me, and the next thing I know, I'm standing in Harry's bedroom, where he is currently busy giving Vivian a hardened stare. Her rigid posture and the tension in the room make it clear they're arguing.
I thought we agreed Chloe shouldn't go to that witch. And now you're telling me you're planning on going instead? Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds?
Vivian's voice cuts through the tension, her words sharp and demanding.
Ronan couldn't have been more clear about her.
Vivian insists, looking worried.
He told us many, many times over not to go anywhere near her.
I know, but...
Just look at what happened to your mother.
Viv.
Harry snaps, sending her a betrayed look.
I know, all right?
His shoulders sag in defeat and my heart twitches uncomfortably at the sight. I shift my feet, my body itching to move and reach him, but to do what I'm not sure. Vivian is looking at Harry somewhat worriedly, but then she squares her shoulders and schools her expression resolutely.
You can't keep doing this, Harry. You're the alpha. Your decisions affect all of us.
It occurs to me that despite all that Harry's already told me, I barely know what being part of a pack entails. I don't even have a family. My whole life, my actions only affected me. But it's not the same for him.
You've made your point. But if I don't go, Chloe will.
She would never go against a direct order from you.
You don't know that. And besides, she'd resent me. Emma's important to her.
To her or to you?
Harry looks taken aback. Meanwhile, I'm holding on to his next words like a lifeline. Could I be somewhat a little important to him? It seems ridiculous to even entertain the idea. A couple of days ago, he was nothing more than my aggravating college professor who, I was certain, couldn't stand me.
She may be Chloe's friend, but she isn't one of us. This Emma, she's not your responsibility.
Nate attacked her.
This makes Vivian go quiet for a minute.
We should have banished him. He's unhinged.
I know, but Chloe would go with him and we can't have that.
I still don't like this. But I guess if Nate's the one who caused the girl harm, then...
She sighs.
Just be careful, Harry. We can't afford to be divided.
And on that note, she takes her leave. Once she's gone, Harry sags into a nearby chair, his anger abated, replaced with weariness.
I take it you heard all that?
He asks, making me jump. I hadn't realized he was aware of my presence. Not everything, I protest, a little embarrassed. I approach him slowly. He doesn't look like he's angry at me for listening in. If anything, he looks almost happy to see me. Which, strange, because people aren't usually happy to see me. So I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. Who's this Ronan guy Vivian mentioned? I ask Harry.
Our previous alpha and my uncle. He had to retire somewhat early, but he lives close by with his mate.
I want to ask him about what Vivian meant when she said his uncle had warned Harry many times over about the witch. But that seems like a sensitive topic. To my surprise, Harry offers up more information anyway, without me having to ask.
We're quite close.
He explains.
He practically raised me himself for most of my life.
What about your parents? I ask, immediately regretting it when I see Harry clench his jaw.
They're dead.
He says with a grim smile. I think back on the tombstone I'd seen amongst the ground on my first night here. I'm sorry, I tell him, wanting very much to grab onto his hand, though I don't dare give it a try.
It was a long time ago.
Harry replies, though it's obvious he's still hurting over the fact. Was it because... My heart begins to pound against my chest, but I force myself to continue. Was it because of the witch? Harry's shoulders tense.
No.
But Vivian said...
It was because of me.
Harry explains in a tone that makes it clear he won't talk about this any further. Because of him? What does he mean by that? I'm sure that's not true. Of course, I'd like nothing more than to ask for more information, but it's not my place to pry. Besides, Harry hadn't questioned me about my shitty family history before, and I'd appreciated that. So the least I can do is not to insist. I consider my next words carefully. Are you sure this witch plan is a good idea, though? Vivian didn't seem to think so. I feel bad. Things are obviously difficult for him. Helping me out is starting to cause tension between him and his... Who is Vivian to him anyway? Are you two a thing? I ask as the thought crosses my mind. Harry's piercing eyes snap to my face.
What, Viv and I? She's my beta, my second in command, if you will.
He adds before I can ask him to explain. I nod, even though he hasn't properly answered my question. I'm looking for a way to pry without being too obvious. I don't want him to think I'm interested in his love life because I'm not. But I do feel like I'm entitled to know because... Well, because...
We're not romantically involved, if that's what you're wondering.
Good. I sigh in relief. However, I snap my mouth shut when Harry's surprised expression makes me realize what I just said. I mean, I scramble for words. Because that would be weird, I guess, if you were. Like, what if I were to teleport in your room while you two were busy?
Busy?
Harry lets out a surprised laugh. It's the first time I've ever heard him properly laugh. He looks very boyish as he does, leaving me just a little bit breathless. I'd appreciate it more if I wasn't so embarrassed. You know what I mean. I scowl, looking away.
Sure,
Harry says, humor still in his voice.
Good thing I'm not too busy then.
I manage to look at him again. He's giving me a soft, warm glance like that time he'd woken up to find me in his bed. It's doing all kinds of things to my poor heart. Maybe he does care a little bit about me, I catch myself thinking. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking. I think ever since meeting him, I've always been looking for his attention. I just hadn't realized I was also hoping for his affection. So, I scratch my throat. Vivian was unhappy with the plan. Harry frowns, all trace of mirth gone from his face.
Don't worry about it. She's just being protective. It's going to be fine.
I frown. Will it, though? If Harry was so worried about letting Chloe see the witch, shouldn't he also worry about himself? But you'll be okay, right? I know you're eager to get rid of me and all, but you shouldn't...
Emma.
Harry interrupts my rambling, walking over to me with a concerned expression.
It's going to be all right. Do you trust me?
Our eyes meet, his gaze penetrating in a way that makes me feel strangely secure. Yes, I say, realizing this is true. He's standing mere inches away, towering over me. I wonder if he'd be able to touch me right now if he tried. My fingers twitch involuntarily.
Good,
He says with a smirk.
and for the record, I'm not overly eager to get rid of you.
Oh, I say, feeling rather dumb.
It would just be nice if you could have your body back.
It would? Why? I ask, searching his expression.
Well, we wouldn't want you to walk in on me getting busy.
I aim to smack him without thinking, but he intercepts me, catching my wrist. More than ever, the feel of his warm skin against mine burns pleasantly. "You're touching me again," I comment, staring at his lips. He's got unfairly beautiful lips, is what I'm thinking. When out of nowhere, there's a knock on Harry's door.
Hey, buddy.
Jake voice sing-songs through the door.
You busy?
Go away, Jake.
Harry snaps without taking his eyes off me. I'm pretty sure he's going to kiss me. He looks like he wants to kiss me,
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Jake says, making Harry groan.
It's just, I was gonna take the kids hunting. It's been a while and, well, they're more manageable with you around.
Harry closes his eyes for a moment, looking fed up.
Fine.
He says, with a sigh. He squeezes my hand before letting go, though not without giving me a slightly regretful look. "So, are you and this Jake guy a thing then?" I joke. Harry rolls his eyes at me, but he's laughing again, so I don't let that bother me. Chapter 11. A week goes by before we hear from the witch, and for lack of anything better to do, I spend those 7 days tailing Harry everywhere he goes. His days are a blend of academia and pack leadership that doesn't leave him much time for himself. At university, he's the stern, articulate professor I've always known, his lectures imbued with a passion I'd been too irritated to fully appreciate before. At home, Harry's always solving a conflict or another, if not within his pack itself, with other wolves settled in the near vicinity. Wolves, I come to learn, start to display supernatural abilities during childhood, and spend the rest of their lives resisting the urge to succumb to their more primal side. After witnessing a couple of kids transform in the middle of dinner, I realize Harry plays a key role in keeping everyone's aggressive instincts in check. How do you make them obey like that? I'd once asked Harry during a short, rare moment where we'd find ourselves alone.
What do you mean?
He'd replied, sounding genuinely curious. I knew him enough by then to see he really had no idea what I meant, so I'd pursued, "Come on." One minute there's a horde of kids screaming at the top of their lungs like savages. The next they're picture still 'cause you simply said stop once. I've babysat before, That doesn't normally happen. Harry had laughed.
It's because they're wolves, and I'm their alpha. If I ask them something, it's in their nature to obey me.
I'd been stunned silent for a moment. And does that work on adult wolves as well?
Yes, for the most part. Wolves recognize authority and feel compelled to abide by it on instinct. So if I say something, there's a strong compulsion to obey even for adults. That said, loyalty and trust go both ways. If I abused my authority, my pack could turn against me.
He says that, but I doubt his pack would ever turn against him. His commanding presence affects everyone around him, which I find disturbing at first, well aware such power could easily be abused. But Harry would never. He sees his pack as family, and I come to appreciate their warm dynamic. "And what is this thing you do?" I'd ask Harry after I'd seen him rub his wrists on one of the kids' arms. It was the first time I'd ever seen Harry do it, but I'd noticed other wolves practicing the same habits during my stay. They'd rub their wrists, or sometimes their nose, over another pack member's body, which I found weird, but which they all seemed to somewhat appreciate.
It's called scent marking.
Harry had explained very seriously, though. I couldn't help myself. I did laugh at that. "What?" I'd asked, incredulous. Harry had laughed along with me, aware that this probably sounded strange to me, a human who'd never heard of that before.
To us, scent is very important.
He'd explained patiently.
Their scent can tell us a lot about another person, what they're like, how they feel.
This had struck me silent. You can tell how other people feel?
Somewhat. It's not like mind reading, but someone's scent can help us read each other's general mood. If someone's very angry, for example, their scent would reflect that anger.
What do I smell like? I'd then ask, feeling very nervous as I awaited the answer, though I hadn't expected Harry to look so genuinely troubled as he'd replied.
You've lost your scent ever since you became a ghost. You don't smell like anything. It's like you're not really there.
He'd explained. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. I was somewhat relieved he couldn't guess any of my emotions from my scent, but it also felt like there was something essential to him that I couldn't give him, and that really bothered me. Well, what did I used to smell like? Before? A very faint blush had grazed Harry's cheekbones, though I'd noticed it nonetheless. Oh God, did that mean he'd smelled the attraction I had for him?
Anyway.
He scratched his throat.
In this context, scent marking someone means you'll be leaving your own scent on them. It's meant to be comforting, though it can be interpreted as possessive, so it's only accepted in specific contexts.
Which are?
An adult can do it to children they're close to, family members, or close pack members.
But you wouldn't do it to other adults?
For adults, it's something that is only appropriate between mates. Wearing someone's scent essentially means you belong to them, so you wouldn't let just anyone do it to you.
I'd thought about this for a moment. I personally wouldn't be able to smell someone's scent on me like that. If another wolf scent marked me, you could smell it on me? I'd ask for confirmation, though I hadn't been prepared for the way Harry would suddenly tense at my words, to the point where he'd look like I committed some great offense.
No other wolf would ever.
He'd snapped, eyes dark with something I couldn't name. And then our discussion had been cut short as someone from the pack had needed Harry with something, which is how most of our discussions always end. Being part of the pack seems a little overwhelming. It's like you can never be alone. At first, I was not sure I'd enjoy it, but as time goes by and as I get to know everyone more and more from afar, I catch myself commenting on the children's progress, reacting to the teenagers' antics, and wishing I could input on the adults' discussion, whether serious or more laid back. But I can't. No one but Harry can hear me, and he barely has time for himself, let alone for a ghost girl he hadn't even liked that much to begin with. I catch myself wishing he had, though. Time for me, that is. Our car rides to the university quickly become the highlight of my days, stolen moments I spend trying to make him laugh while he pretends it doesn't work. He does start taking increasingly longer routes to stretch our time together, and I'd love to take that as a sign that he sees me not just as another supernatural obligation, but as someone who might genuinely matter to him. But the more time passes, the more absurd that seems. He's not interested in me that way. He's just concerned for me like he is for everyone else. It's practically in his nature. In the evenings, I catch myself wanting to follow him to his bedroom, but he never explicitly asks me to, and I don't dare phrasing anything either. What's the point? What future is there for us? It's not like he'd want one with me, he who lives for his obligations. He belongs with someone who can share the weight of his responsibilities and lessen the burden he bears of watching over everyone else. I could never be that person. I've never looked after anyone but myself in my entire life. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Amid all this confusion, I do receive some good news. My doctors contact Harry and explain they'll be operating on me, which they believe should speed up my recovery. The surgery goes well, and I become hopeful that we might not even need to meet with the witch, as I might wake up before then. But by the day of the meeting, it still hasn't happened, which is why we are now back in Grimwood in front of the bookstore we'd found Chloe at a week ago.
I'd feel better if you waited outside.
Harry grumbles as he opens the door to the shop. You know I'd just end up popping next to you even if I tried staying behind. Harry is saying something under his breath about how he suspects I do that on purpose, when a strange-looking man interrupts us. He's in his 50s with a long, sickly face, though it's his eyes, vacant, expressionless voids, which attract my attention.
She's waiting for you in the back,
he says in a toneless voice. We walk towards the end of the dark, dusty shop, so quiet all we hear are Harry's footsteps echoing through the small space and step behind a blue curtain which must have seen better days. We stop in our tracks as we discover what's hidden behind it. We're outside, in a wide, flowery field bathed in the warm, fiery glow of sunset, despite the time being closer to midday mere minutes ago. The sight is breathtaking, but with an undercurrent of wrongness that I can't quite pinpoint. It's not just that it feels like we've traveled far away from the bookstore in merely 2 steps. There's something wrong with this deceptively serene scenery. Something lurking. We hear the witch laugh before we see her. In the blink of an eye, Harry finds himself seated at a table set for tea, and in front of him is a beautiful woman with strawberry blonde hair. Very young if it wasn't for the ageless depth of her bright blue eyes. She crosses her hands under her chin, giving him a blank stare.
You don't look like a Chloe,
she says, lips stretched into a smile.
I have something for you.
Harry hands over a small box to the witch. She opens it unhurriedly, taking a careful look inside. I'm not sure what it contains, but whatever it is makes the witch frown.
You're Cassandra Hargrove's son,
she says, eyeing Harry carefully. He nods, face impassive, though I can tell he's feeling tense.
Is she?
She died.
Harry interrupts in a tone that leaves no room for discussion. The witch eyes him carefully. She doesn't look sorry exactly, but there's a flicker of something behind her eyes.
Your mother was quite remarkable.
So I've heard.
The witch slowly takes in another look inside the box.
What would you like in exchange?
Information.
The witch's eyes snap to where I'm standing by Harry's chair.
About the spirit you have with you, I take it.
My heartbeat picks up, but it's her next words that shock me into silence.
Though, it appears your spirit's time is almost up.
She tells Harry with a serene smile. I sense a sudden tension coils within him, even though he doesn't let it show openly.
What do you mean?
The witch drops a cube of sugar inside her cup, twirling it around with a spoon.
It looks like your spirit has been separated from its body for too long.
She comments with a shrug.
It's withering away, and soon it will be gone forever.
Harry's asking the witch more questions, but there's ringing in my ears, preventing me from understanding what they're saying. Could this be true? Am I going to disappear? But when exactly? And will I go anywhere, or will I just be gone? These questions keep twirling in my mind as my anxiety grows into full-blown panic. Instinctively, I reach for Harry's arm, holding on to him like he's the anchor keeping me alive.
What are you doing?
The witch interposes, sounding surprised. I realize she's now looking straight at me.
You'll drain yourself out even quicker manifesting like this.
What do you mean by manifesting?
Harry asks wearily. The witch sends him a bored look.
Your friend is here in spirit form, her soul lingering away from her body. A soul isn't meant to have a corporal form, so when she manifests one, she's essentially burning away her soul faster, like a burning candle.
Harry pales, letting go of my hand. My fingers feel freezing outside of his.
How does it work exactly? From what she tells me, it's not something she can control.
The witch seems amused.
It's all a matter of motivation.
She replies evasively.
Should she want it hard enough, she'll manage to reach the physical plane. Though, like I said, I'd restrain myself from now if I were her. She won't last for very long at this rate.
Hearing the word motivation, I think back to all the times I'd managed to manifest as the witch calls it. The first time was when I'd touched Harry's hand. The second when he'd hugged me at the hospital. The third when I thought he would kiss me. So this was essentially me wanting to touch him? I glance his way as he asks for more details to the witch, brows furrowed in a stern expression I would have mocked a week ago, but which only seems endearing to me now.
How do we get her soul back into her body?
Well, we'd have to figure out how it got away in the first place, I suppose.
Emma was in an accident.
The witch doesn't reply immediately. Instead, she watches Harry pensively, eyes drifting towards me once in a while.
When someone's stuck between life and death, their soul tends to linger around their bodies, but hers hasn't. Instead, it attached itself to you.
Me?
Him? I ask in a strangled voice.
Well, yes. She follows you everywhere, doesn't she? You're a wolf. You should know a thing or two about why souls connect.
I frown in confusion. What does she mean by that? Does Harry know something I don't? I watch his face decompose from shock into a grim expression I don't like one bit. He's troubled by something, except I have no idea what.
I see.
He looks so defeated. Does it mean I'm done for? I want to ask, but the witch gets up from her chair, gesturing for us to go. Harry ignores her, lost in thought.
Don't pout, handsome. It hasn't fully set yet. Make sure it doesn't, and she should reunite with her body once it is healed. If it heals soon, that is. Now, I think I've said more than enough in exchange for this little trinket.
She puts the object Harry has brought her in the pocket of her long skirt, gives us a little wave, and then snaps her fingers. The next thing I know, we're sitting inside Harry's car outside the bookshop, the midday light bright behind the window pane. I'm too stunned to speak. I have so many questions and feelings, I don't know how to phrase anything coherent. I turn to Harry, expecting him to fill in the blanks or at the very least say something vaguely encouraging about my predicament. But he keeps his eyes set ahead, starts the engine, and drives us home without uttering a word. Chapter 12. By evening, my thoughts and feelings are a little more ordered, enough that I wish to discuss what happened earlier with Harry. Having had the time to reconsider what the witch has told us, I've concluded that things aren't as bad as I'd initially thought. I mean, she did say my soul would go back to my body once it was healed. And currently, my body's recuperating from a surgery that supposedly went well. So there's good reason to hope that I'll wake up soon. Who knows? Maybe by tomorrow or a couple of days, I'll be back to my old self again. Well, a bit more bruised and beaten than I'd like, but nothing time won't heal. So I don't understand why Harry is taking this news so hard. He clenched his jaw during the entire car ride home, not uttering a single word to me. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it, but now, a few hours later, it bothers me that we haven't had a chance to speak. I follow him around the house, confused by the tension radiating from him in waves, and try to get his attention multiple times. But Harry's suddenly busier than I've ever seen him, constantly by someone's side, gaze stubbornly fixed on anything but me. It's making it impossible for us to interact. And after patiently waiting for him for an hour, which turns into 3, it becomes apparent that this lack of opportunity isn't just bad luck. I'm pretty sure he's avoiding me. I watch from the sidelines, like I'm not even there, overcome with the same feeling of abandonment I'd experienced growing up with a mother who barely even looked at me. It hurt then, and it hurts now. I'd probably cry if I wasn't so angry for opening myself up for disappointment once again. Screw Harry for making me trust him only to reject me down the line for no reason. I give up staying by his side and decide to hide away in different corners of the house, near enough that I won't accidentally teleport right next to him, but not in his line of sight. I feel slightly better not having to look at his impossibly beautiful face as he gives me the cold shoulder, though not very much. It's past dinner time and people are beginning to retire for the night. Even my anger's fading away, leaving only confusion in its wake. I don't understand why Harry would suddenly avoid me when he's done nothing but help me until now. Memories of his kind smiles and past soothing words traitorously assail me, and I'm left wondering if I've been overreacting. I begin to feel a familiar tug, and I expect to end up by Harry's side in a second, but pride stops me from letting it happen. Well, pride and a good dose of fear. If I stay away, I can keep telling myself his aloof behavior was all in my head. I don't want to subject myself to another rejection. Not tonight. Though I can't help but wonder what he's doing now. Grading papers? Surely he isn't sleeping yet. Is he? I close my eyes. Emotions which aren't my own arise within me, a painful mix of tension and sorrow. I gasp in surprise. I can't believe how distraught Harry feels. A strong pull overcomes me like he's calling for me without using words, but I resist it. He's hurt my feelings, so there's no way I'm going to him. I manage to hold that thought for at least an hour more before I erupt from my hiding spot like the weak-willed fool I am. Screw my pride. I'm going to find Harry because he's miserable, and it may be small, but I do have a heart. I instinctively know where to find him, his weighted emotion beaconing me despite the slight haze that has begun to envelop them like cotton. Is he about to fall asleep? I hurry to the living room where I find him in mid-conversation with Vivian because of course she'd be there, like the stalker she is. In front of her, Harry is sprawled in an old leather chair, a glass of something alcoholic in hand which I can tell isn't his first. I'd be amused if it wasn't for Vivian's hand resting on his knee. She's touching him so casually, whereas I can't. They're whispering to each other in a manner that's clearly meant to be private. So naturally, I hide in a corner to listen in, betting on Harry being too intoxicated to notice.
Are you sure?
Vivian says, sounding concerned.
Maybe you understood wrong.
Nope. I'm sure.
Harry sighs before slamming back the rest of his drink.
It makes sense.
He aims to pour himself another, but Vivian confiscates his glass with a worried expression.
Well,
She begins cautiously.
isn't that good news?
Good.
Harry laughs, though there's nothing joyful about it.
How so?
Vivian hesitates before speaking, watching him close his eyes with a tired sigh.
Surely finding one's soulmate is something to be happy about.
She says after a while. I frown in confusion. What is she talking about? Harry seems to get it, though, because he immediately tenses, snapping an eye open.
Why would I be happy about having Emma as a soulmate? It's a disaster.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. Could this be true? Am I Harry's soulmate? I think back on what the witch had told us earlier, and suddenly her words begin to make sense. I can't believe I hadn't realized until now. She essentially said our souls were attached, and that Harry, a werewolf who knows all about soulmates, should have recognized the situation for what it was. Ever since waking up, I've been glued to his side. I can more or less read his emotions. He's the only one who can see me. Oh my God. Tears begin to stream down my face. Is this why he's been avoiding me? Because I'm his soulmate and he doesn't want me?
So this Emma, she's been around this whole time?
Vivian asks, curious.
Is she here now?
No, she's upset with me.
Harry rubs a tired hand over his face.
Probably for the best.
A sense of dread overcomes me at his words. My entire being feels like it's been drenched in ice. A shiver runs down my spine. I'm so cold. I don't want to stay here anymore. I flee from my hiding spot, too distraught to care if I get seen, although I don't think Harry notices through the haze of alcohol. And even if he did, it's not like he'd care. He doesn't want me around. No one ever does. Chapter 13. The next day, I remain stubbornly hidden in a corner of Chloe's room, praying for the bond not to drag me by Harry's side while he drives to university. The last thing I want is to be stuck alone with him in a confined space, so that he can butcher what's left of my poor heart with the sheer force of his indifference. Despite the growing pull I feel, the almost inescapable urge to teleport over to him, I manage to hold it off long enough for it to happen once he's entering his morning lecture. I breathe a sigh of relief, heading to the back of his class to linger behind a group of students as they settle in their seats, hoping they'll hide me from view should Harry choose to look this way.
Damn, what's wrong with Dr. Saxe? He looks rough.
One of them asks, starting his computer.
He looks hungover.
More like miserable. You'd think someone died.
A girl adds.
Maybe he just got dumped?
Don't be stupid. No one this attractive gets dumped.
This is your chance, Laura. Go. Heal his broken heart.
The girl, Laura, blushes stupidly, making me roll my eyes. I'd love to tell her that if she's into emotionally unavailable men bound to break her heart, then sure. Harry's a great pick. Except I can't, because not only can she not hear me, but most importantly, that wouldn't even be true. Harry is perfect. I'm the one who's lacking. Worst soulmate in the world, apparently. Completely unlovable. My mood slightly improves as Chloe arrives inside the room, taking place in a seat a few rows behind me, though not without sending Harry a curious look which quickly turns into one of concern. I don't know what she's concerned about. He'll be just fine once I wake up and get out of his life forever. Harry begins his lecture, though it completely lacks the enthusiasm he usually displays. I sneak a glance at him and have to admit he does look pretty distraught, tired and with something heavy hanging in the air around him. Probably the horror of having me for a soulmate. I'm viciously hoping his hangover gives him a world of pain when I notice Chloe tensing in her seat. She's discreetly looking at her phone and I know that face. This is the face she makes when Nate is being difficult with her. I've seen it many times before. Chloe texts him something back, but not even a minute later. She's back to staring worriedly at her phone, biting her lip. And then she practically jumps out of her seat and hurries towards the exit where none other than Nate is waiting for her, a furious expression on his face. What is he doing here? He says something I can't hear and then grabs her by the arm, pulling her after him with a ferocity I don't like. Without thinking, I get up to run after them, apprehension twisting my stomach. I don't trust Nate with her, not for a second. However, I stop dead in my tracks when I notice the entire room's gone silent. What's with the awkward break? Oh no. With a wince, I slowly turn to the front of the lecture hall where, sure enough, Harry's watching me with a dumbfounded expression I don't know what to make of. Our eyes meet and it feels like all the air is being pushed out of my lungs, even though I don't even need to breathe. Why is he looking at me like that? Well, don't stop on my account. I sneer defensively before resuming my exit, head held high. I ignore how the obvious wince he displays hurts my soul and run out into the hall, searching for Chloe's blonde head. Luckily, I see her and Nate take a turn and disappear inside a bathroom. I hurry in after them.
I told you not to go in today.
Nate is sneering at Chloe as I get inside the room unnoticed.
Why is it so hard for you to understand?
Chloe's trying to wiggle free of his hold.
And I told you I need space.
She replies cautiously.
Please let go, Nate. You're hurting.
Space? What for? You're my mate, Chloe. The only thing you should need is me.
I scoff in anger. This guy is insufferable, treating Chloe like she's his property. Her being his mate is no excuse.
You hurt Emma.
Chloe snaps, removing her arm.
This isn't something I can just ignore.
Her again? Ever since meeting her, you've been treating me like crap. She's a bad influence on you. If you ask me, it's a good thing that car managed to hit.
Chloe interrupts his sentence with a loud slap against his cheek, eyes wide after she's realized what she's done. She opens her mouth in shock, though Nate doesn't allow her to speak. He slaps her right back with all his strength, making Chloe fall onto the ground in a cry of pain. I scream as he raises his arm again, like he's about to hit her harder. Without a thought, I jump onto his back, holding back his arm with all my strength as I bite violently into his ear. Leave Chloe alone! I scream as a confused Nate tries to wiggle out of my grasp. I hit the ground with a grunt, catching Chloe's horrified expression as I do so.
Emma,
she whispers, eyes wide in shock. Chloe can see me? I reach for her hand and I aim to reply when I feel a strong hand encircling my throat, and suddenly I'm lifted off the ground, pulled towards Nate's red, distorted face. His features are twisted in anger, reminding me of the night he'd attacked us at the club.
You!
He seethes, murder in his eyes. He squeezes my neck with intent, obviously trying to choke me, and I might not need to breathe, but it hurts like hell. Not only that, I start to recall how the witch had warned me against manifesting a day ago, claiming doing so would drain me. I'm not sure this is what she meant, but I feel like all strength is abandoning me. I can hear Chloe screaming from far away and dazedly watch Nate's mouth curl in fury. He's speaking to me, but I can't tell what he's saying. Suddenly, the bathroom door opens to reveal Harry's furious expression. Our eyes briefly meet, his widening in fear. Or at least, that's what it looks like, though it's hard to tell because black spots are forming into my field of vision. Nate abruptly lets go of me and I fall like a limp doll. I vaguely hear him say something to Harry as the latter grabs him by the collar, throwing him across the room against a sink. The sight awakens me a little because it's so satisfying watching Nate grab onto his bleeding nose.
I'm sorry.
He's saying like a berated little boy, bowing to Harry who doesn't reply, instead kneeling by my side to hold my face in his hands.
Emma, stop manifesting.
He tells me like I have any control over the situation. He looks frantic as he pulls me towards him. His beautiful features twisted in fear, a contrast with the calm, soothing tone he's addressing me with. I briefly wonder what he's so afraid of, before being slightly dazzled by how close he's holding me. His eyes are such a pretty color, even now as they turn into gold. His hands feel scorching hot against my skin. That's when I realize how cold I am. I can barely move my fingers. Also, I'm very angry with Harry. I tell him so. Go away! I gasp, though I'm grasping at his jacket like a lifeline. I don't need you. He replies something, at least I think he does. His voice wavers, but so does my consciousness. I can't see anything anymore. All I feel is the cold and a heavy weight on my chest, the sudden conviction that this is surely what dying feels like. I think Harry's begging me to stay conscious, but I ignore it, closing my eyes. Death doesn't sound too bad right about now. At least I probably won't feel any more pain. Chapter 14. I don't understand what's happening straight away when I regain consciousness. I'm tired and confused, but I feel pleasantly warm now. The cold I felt before is a distant memory. I become increasingly aware of long fingers running pleasantly through my hair and a strong chest under my cheek. I'm being held in someone's arms, I realize, and it feels wonderful. I sigh happily. And then, my chin is delicately lifted so that my eyes meet a soft gray gaze.
You're awake,
Harry says, sighing in relief though his mouth is still twisted in worry. I can't look away as he grazes my cheek with his thumb, making me shiver.
Are you still cold?
I slowly shake my head, feeling myself blush. I think I'm enjoying being held too much. It'll be too painful when it eventually stops. Harry places a lock of hair behind my ear, looking so earnestly concerned it nearly breaks my heart.
Are you sure?
Why is he looking at me like I'm something precious when I know it isn't true? Where are we? I reply, looking around. We're inside a bedroom that vaguely resembles his, although there are some notable differences, such as the chimney hosting a burning fire right by the big chair we're sitting on. And how come we're still touching? I ask, staring as Harry captures my fingers in his own. He pulls me tight against him, burying his nose into my hair.
I'm not sure where we are,
He replies.
but I think we can touch because this entire place isn't real.
He says this like it is the least of his concerns, and I feel so boneless, wrapped in his arms, that I almost accept this statement for what it is. Almost, but not quite. What do you mean it isn't real? I ask, searching his expression. Are we in a dream? It would make sense for Harry only to hold me in my dreams, though. I wiggle around in his lap to get a better look at him, straddling his waist with my bare thighs. It occurs to me, perhaps a little late, that I'm only wearing a shirt. I gulp, feeling the warmth of his skin against my leg. Oh, I fumble, blushing furiously. Sorry.
What for?
Harry's gaze darkens. His fingers slowly travel up my thighs. I can't help myself. I moan. I'd be embarrassed if not for the look Harry gives me in response.
Emma.
His hands clench my hips. I bite my lip, trying to hold back the pathetic squeal begging to escape. Are we in a dream? He replies, staring distractedly at my lips. I catch his chin between my fingers. What's happening? I ask before I remember that if this is all a dream, it's probably going to end soon, and I better make the most of it while I still can. My lips crack. A kiss Harry immediately deepens, pulling me flush against him as I run my hands along his arms, enjoying the strong muscles I feel beneath my palms. I feel wild and just a little bit desperate as he lifts me without interrupting our kiss, walking us over to bed with my legs still wrapped around his hips. More overwhelming than my growing desire is the sudden influx of Harry's yearning thoughts, filling my mind like they're my own. I can feel how much he wants me, how hard he's holding back for fear of hurting me, despite being practically delirious with need now that he's finally holding me after craving it for so long, practically since he's met me. I'm overwhelmed by this new information and by Harry's lips on my neck, his teeth grazing the skin. A surge of possessiveness, his own, threatens to consume me as I can practically hear Harry's voice inside my head, calling me his over and over again with vivid urgency. Now, I know for a fact this isn't real. The real Harry would never feel this way about me, would never touch me and think and feel about me with a passion that too much resembles love. Tears sting my eyes, and I try to hold back a sob, but I guess the sharing of emotions goes both ways, because Harry immediately moves away like...
Did I hurt you?
He asks, eyes full of sorrow. He aims to move even further away, but I don't let him, throwing my arms around him as I bury my face into his neck, letting my tears fall. Harry's confusion and fear only add to my emotional outburst.
What's wrong?
He asks, softly caressing my hair.
Please tell me, what can I do?
He sounds so concerned, all I can do is unburden myself, settling for this illusory comfort like a lifeline. I wish it was real, I confess, once my sobs have quieted. Harry lets out a frustrated little laugh.
Trust me, so do I.
I shake my head. No, you don't, not really. Harry pulls away from me to give me a searching look.
What?
He asks, carefully drying away my cheeks with his I'd no idea was possible. I love him, I realize as I watch him give me a soft, encouraging smile. I'm so in love with him. I've conjured up a whole fantasy of him which hurts all the more knowing I could never have this. I heard you the other night, I tell him, moving away. Harry looks at me with the same confusion he feels. It annoys me enough to continue. You told Vivian I was your soulmate, I remind him with a pout. Harry frowns, reaching for my hand.
You are,
he says carefully.
Does it bother you?
I can't believe him. I snatch my hand away. No, it bothers you, I say with a reproachful look. You said it was a disaster. The memory of it brings new tears to my eyes as recollection slowly dawns on Harry's face.
Oh,
he says, expression crumbling.
That's not what Emma, I'm sorry.
He pulls me into a crushing hug.
If I'd known you were there, I should have realized.
He sighs, pulling away to look at me before speaking again.
Please don't cry, sweetheart. It's killing me.
Why? I scoff, disbelieving. You obviously...
Emma, it's not that I don't want you.
Harry laughs.
Why wouldn't I want you? You're perfect.
He brings my hands to his lips with a near worshipful expression that leaves me speechless.
My perfect, beautiful mate.
I roll my eyes at him. That's not what you sounded like when you were drunk. Harry has the decency to look a little embarrassed.
Emma, what I said, it wasn't for lack of love.
Love? I interrupt, feeling my heart twitch inside my chest. Harry gives me a soft, tender smile. I don't know what to think anymore. I'm so confused. He seems sincere, but he was also genuinely upset the other night. What am I meant to think? I'm about to ask another question when something flashes before my eyes. A bright, artificial light, dangling from a ceiling that looks nothing like the one in this room.
Looks like our time's running out,
says Harry with a frown. What do you mean? I ask, feeling myself being pulled away from him.
You were fading away earlier?
Harry explains, though his voice seems further and further away.
But as soulmates, you and I have a mental connection. I tried holding onto your mind, and we ended up here.
Oh, this kind of makes sense, I guess. Wait. No, it doesn't. Still confused here. But I thought we weren't bonded, I say, thinking back on what the witch had explained. That our connection hadn't set yet or whatever. Harry looks like he wants to say something, but the next thing I know, I'm lying on the bathroom floor back on our university campus. Harry is watching over me, his pale face sagging in relief upon meeting my gaze.
She's waking up,
he tells Chloe, who's beside him, looking frightened.
Ask her how she feels.
My friend immediately presses, sending Harry an affronted look.
Is she still cold? Is she going to disappear?
Harry sends me an amused glance.
You heard that?
He asks me. I sit back up immediately, excitement renewing my energy. Chloe knows I'm here?
Harry.
Chloe presses, shaking his arm.
What's going on? What did Emma say?
I squeal in delight. Oh my God, tell her I've got so much to tell her. I order Harry. She's not going to believe what I've been through.
She says she's been having a splendid time in my company,
Harry tells Chloe with a slight smirk. I roll my eyes. I didn't say that.
She didn't say that,
Chloe adds. I notice there's a bruise under her left eye, which reminds me of how we ended up here in the first place. Where's Nate? I ask, looking around for any traces of his sorry ass. There is none.
I've kicked him out of the pack,
Harry explains, giving Chloe a look. Worry immediately tightens my gut. But what about Chloe? You said she'd go with him since they're mates. Harry places a hand on Chloe's arm.
I think I know what she just asked,
Chloe says suddenly, looking more grim. But she squares her shoulders before announcing in a brave tone.
I did it, Emma. I rejected Nate as my mate. Our bond is broken.
Chapter 15. A lot is going on the next couple of days, and it's not all good. While I seem to be out of danger, the same can't be said about Chloe, whose mood quickly deteriorates from brave conviction to an alarming hollowness that has everyone worried. Harry and Vivian reach out to a healer from another pack who's accompanied people experiencing a broken bond in the past. The diagnostic isn't everything we hoped to hear, but at least there's hope.
It might not look like it at the moment, but trust me, she's doing fine given the circumstances.
The healer explains after seeing Chloe.
She's the one who's rejected the bond freely, which significantly raises her chances of overcoming the separation. It might take a while for her mood to improve, but she'll get there.
I take it severing a mating bond is no easy task, though I'm not given much more detail about it, other than that Chloe is mostly doing okay for now. I visit her with Harry, but despite her brave face, she looks pale and shaken, her eyes always on the brink of tears. I hate seeing her like this, but I'm not sorry Nate had to leave, not with how violent he was becoming towards her. Meanwhile, Harry and I hear back from my doctors who confess that while my surgery went perfectly and my body seems to be recovering nicely, the fact that I haven't yet regained consciousness is troubling. The doctors don't seem to know what to make of it for now, and though they remain optimistic, I become certain something's wrong. I feel it in my gut. I should have woken up by now. Strangely, I haven't. Sometimes I feel something calling to me, a strange sense of awareness as I hear the beeping sound of the machines I'd seen hooked to my body and smell the aseptic scent of hospital soap. It's like I'm about to open my eyes, but then I feel a tug, and I end up by Harry's side, his presence warm and inviting. It's like there's a thread constantly pulling me towards him, which refuses to let me go back where I belong, in the hospital, inside my own body. After evading the subject for a couple of days, I become worried as the witch's warning words echo in my mind. She'd implied that I would wake up if our bond didn't set. But what if it had somehow? What if it was precisely what was preventing me from waking up? I share my worries with Harry, half expecting him to deny the possibility, but instead, he looks at me with a resigned expression.
I think you're right,
He says.
There's no other explanation.
I panic a little bit. Does this mean I'm officially doomed to roam the earth as a ghost forever, that there's no hope left? I don't want to live like this. I want my body back. I want to eat again, to touch again, to be able to comfort Chloe in person. I meet Harry's saddened gaze. We haven't properly talked since our time together in my dream, a time I'm still unsure was even real. Does he remember our conversation? Was he even there, or did I imagine him? I don't know how he feels. Does he want me as his mate or not? I'd rather not consider the possibility that he does. I can't set myself up for disappointment, not when our being together isn't even a tangible possibility. On top of all the reasons why I worry our relationship wouldn't work, him not feeling the same being on top of my mind, there's also the fact that we can't even touch, and how I long to touch him again, the memory of his body against mine tantalizing in its impossibility. I think you should try rejecting the bond, I tell Harry without thinking. Upon hearing this, he stays silent for a while, eyes lost in space. If he says no, then I won't insist, I tell myself. If he says no, then it will be proof that he wants me around, that perhaps he does want me for a mate. If he's unwilling to let me go, then it'll mean that he
All right,
Harry says without meeting my eyes.
I'll do it.
I'm stunned, speechless, feeling a mix of hope at the idea of perhaps waking up inside my body, and despair upon knowing I was right all along. He doesn't love me. He wants me gone. He braces his shoulders, ready to break our bond. But, as he is about to speak, an image of Chloe, pale and quiet in her room, fills my mind. Wait, I say hesitantly. Harry meets my eyes, gaze impenetrable. I wish I could get a glimpse of his feelings, but I get nothing from him, nor his composed expression. You'll be fine, right? I ask, feeling stupid that my concern is probably written all over my face. Harry gives me a kind, reassuring smile.
Of course,
He assures me. Because you're going to reject me like Chloe did Nate, so you'll be fine. Harry nods slowly, face still impassive. Besides, we've been bonded for 2 minutes, I add. And it's not like it's something you wanted. Harry looks away, scratching his throat. He wets his lips before speaking his next words.
I, Harry,
He begins, tone blank.
reject you, Emma, as my mate.
His shoulders slump, like the mere weight of the words has taken him a considerable effort. I consider saying something when the familiar tug I've come to know so well begins pulling at my core. I'm right next to Harry. So surely, this time, I think it's working. I gasp. The last thing I see is Harry's pained gaze before the room dissolves into darkness. Then I hear the sound of machines picking up. I try to move, but I feel like an impossible weight settling on my...
She's waking up!
I hear someone say next to me.
Call Dr. Parks!
My eyes snap open onto the hospital ceiling, and I gasp for air for the first time in weeks.
Chapter 16. Chloe's point of view. Laughter erupts behind my bedroom window as the young ones engage in a game of tag. It's a beautiful day outside, warm sunlight filtering through the curtains. A year ago, my lover Nate and I would have been with them right now, doing the chasing. He'd grow bored of running after the kids and would start chasing me instead, grabbing me in his arms, telling me he loves me. How could things go so wrong? I look at my unmade bed, debating whether or not to go back under the covers. I'd promised myself to be strong today, but now that I'm up, I don't think I'll manage it. I broke my soulmate bond, rejecting the person I was destined to love forever. How could I expect to be okay after that? A part of me knows it was the right thing to do. I could barely recognize the man I'd fallen in love with. The person I thought he was would never harm my best friend like Nate had done with Emma. When I close my eyes, all I can see are images of him wrapping his hands around her neck and choking her. But then, I remember how he used to be, the way he used to say my name, like it was something to be revered. Everything hurts, body and soul, and I can't imagine it will ever stop. My phone beeps with yet another message from Nate. I promised myself not to read them, but he's relentless, and it's becoming difficult to resist. I think I would have given up by now if Vivian hadn't knocked on my door.
How are you doing?
She asks me with an assessing gaze. Vivian isn't the warmest person in the world. She's very private and controlling and doesn't tend to show a lot of emotions. But I've grown to understand that it doesn't mean she's uncaring.
Harry wishes to see you.
She tells me in a tone that implies this isn't a request. I frown. Harry knows I'm not doing very well, so if he's asking for me, it has to be important. Did something happen to Emma? I immediately get up from my chair. All right, I reply, exiting my bedroom with a nod. I find Harry in his office, shuffling through papers distractedly. He doesn't seem to realize I've arrived, so I knock on his door politely, making him raise his eyes towards me.
Chloe,
He gives me a tight yet genuine smile.
how are you feeling?
I walk over to him, with the strange impression that something is wrong, although I can't put my finger on what. Vivian said you wanted to see me? Harry nods.
Emma's awake.
He tells me, with a neutral expression.
I'd like you to go visit her at the hospital.
Emma's awake? It sounds almost too good to be true, like a huge weight has suddenly lifted off my shoulders. But I don't understand why Harry sounds so grim. I decide to think about that later. Right now, all I want is to check on my best friend. Of course, I reply, clasping my hands together. Shall we go now? Harry looks startled for a second, but quickly schools his features.
Vivian can drive if you don't feel up to it.
I blink in confusion. Why would Vivian drive me instead of him? And is he avoiding my eyes? Can't we go together? I ask. Surely Harry would want to see Emma too. I've seen how scared he was for her when she'd been in danger of disappearing after protecting me from Nate. Harry? I insist, because it looks like he's forgotten my presence for a second. You're coming with me, right? There's a brief flicker of pain on his face before he squares his shoulder and replies, in a stern voice,
I don't think I can make the time right now, Chloe.
What? He can't make the time. How could he not make the time for Emma? She must be scared and lonely. I know Harry's very busy, but to the point where he can't take an hour to visit her. It doesn't sound like him. Harry, it doesn't matter what stupid fight you and Emma have gotten into, okay? She's going through a tough time right now, and I know you care, so... Harry flinches, making me lose my trail of thoughts. I realize what's been feeling so wrong since I walked into his office. It's him, that's what. His face looks pale and clammy like he's running a fever. His eyes are dull and there's a faint tremor in his hands. What's wrong? I ask him, annoyance giving way to concern. Are you ill? It feels ridiculous to ask. We werewolves simply do not get ill. Ever. Health is one of the biggest perks of our condition, one that extends to near immediate recovery from any injury. The only thing that makes us sick is, oh my God, I exclaim as I realize what's happening. I recognize Harry's symptoms. They're ones of bond withdrawal, similar to what I've been experiencing myself ever since breaking my bond with Nate. You and Emma are mates? I ask Harry, despite already knowing the answer. He sighs.
Well, not anymore.
He replies, looking away.
I rejected our bond.
I'm stunned, speechless for a moment. How could he be so stupid? Why would you—
It was preventing her from waking up.
Harry snaps, before letting his shoulders sag.
And besides, it's for the best. She's a human. It wouldn't have worked.
You can't know that. She makes you happy, Harry, I can tell.
And I'm supposed to risk her life because she makes me happy?
Harry gives me a furious glare I'm not used to being on the receiving end of. I consider his words. Bonds between wolves are indeed very intense, to the point of straining at times. When Nate and I first got together, he locked me up in his room and made love to me for days on end, a rhythm I kept up with because I'm not human. I guess this would be more difficult for Emma. I mean, I'm sure you could practice some restraint, I tell him, avoiding his gaze because this is a very awkward topic to discuss with someone who's essentially like an older brother to me.
Chloe, I'm talking about the fact that living amongst us would almost guarantee her getting bitten at some point or another.
Harry scoffs, giving me a stern gaze. Oh, that makes sense. A bite is nearly always fatal to humans. You think she'd get killed? I sum up, feeling my chest become tight with sorrow. This is a fairly good point. It would be very risky for Emma to be bonded to Harry. I know Harry's mother had been human, and that meant he had to grow up away from her. I think he barely saw her when he was little, and then she died when he was still quite young, having never fully recovered from giving birth to him. That can't be easy for him to live with, especially with how his father never recovered from her loss. But what about you? I insist. Breaking a bond is painful, Harry. I should know.
I'm fine,
Harry assures me, with a confident smile that loses its effect because of how exhausted he looks. You're really not.
Well, if anybody asks, you'll say I'm doing just fine.
Harry commands, in a tone that leaves no room for discussion. You mean if Emma asks? I sum up with a frown, because I know I'm going to have to do as he says. This isn't a friend asking me for a favor. This is my alpha giving me an explicit order. I may not like it, but I can't tell him no. Harry shows me the door in a clear sign of dismissal.
Go see her,
He says, though not unkindly.
It would do you both good to have a friend right now.
I leave to get my things and drive to the hospital shortly after that. Chapter 17. Emma's doctors won't let me see her before 3 days later. I've been waiting impatiently for this visit, but now that I'm standing by her door, in a brightly lit hospital hall, I'm too nervous to knock. I haven't seen her, physically, since the accident. She's probably badly hurt, and I know it's going to kill me to see it. Not only that, but will she want to speak to me? It's essentially my fault she's in here, and while it was easy to forget how badly she was hurt while she was a ghost, she must have awakened to a world of pain. A cruel reminder of the accident she'd been in, an accident I'd unwillingly caused by becoming her friend. If I'd stayed away, Nate wouldn't have hurt her. But this isn't about me. This is about Emma. I have to be there for her, despite the guilt and shame I feel. I briefly knock on her door before entering her room, which is a cheerless shade of beige that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Add the constant hum of machinery, and this has to be one of the most depressing atmospheres to wake up to. Amidst it all is Emma, propped up in a seated position by her inclinable bed. She's hooked up to a bunch of machines, but what is most striking is how bruised and swollen her face is. Her expression is hopeful to the point of fragile, though it quickly disappears when she recognizes me.
Chloe?
She exclaims in surprise. Hey, I say, voice a little tight. I walk beside her, not missing how her eyes keep drifting back to the door like she's expecting someone else to come in. I'm so happy you're finally awake. How are you doing? I ask, squeezing her hand. Emma shrugs before grimacing in pain at the movement.
Me? Oh, not too bad.
She jokes, tone light.
Well, apart from the food that is truly awful stuff hospital food.
I can't help but wince at the sight of her, trying to be brave despite her situation. Emma, look, I just want to say... Her eyes widen in panic and she interrupts before I can continue.
You wouldn't believe what they gave me for lunch,
She says.
Practically a crime against humanity.
Emma?
Take this gray slime, for example.
Emma.
I've been naming the dishes based on their potential threat level to human life.
Emma, stop, I plead, squeezing my hand a little harder. You're doing this thing where you make bad jokes instead of discussing your feelings. She laughs a little, rolling her eyes. She's used to me seeing right through her tough girl facade. Not that Emma isn't tough, but it's not because she tends to avoid her feelings that she doesn't have any. She looks hesitant for a little moment, but then she squares her shoulder and looks at me straight in the eyes.
Where is he?
She asks, in a vulnerable tone I've never heard her use.
Is he okay?
It's pretty obvious who she's asking after, but I'm still surprised. The thing about Emma is that she's been on her own since she was very young. Her self-preservation instincts pretty much define her entire personality. So, for her to be so obviously concerned for Harry, when I know for a fact that she would have been solely focused on her condition only a month ago, is kind of mind-blowing. I want to tell her the truth, but Harry specifically asked me not to. And it's not that I can't disobey my alpha, but I can't do it when I trust him to know what's best. If he thinks Emma should be kept away from our world, despite how much he cares for her, then he's probably right. I don't want to see my friend get hurt, or worse, killed, any more than he does, so... Oh, he's fine, I assure her with the most confident smile I can manage. Don't worry about him. Emma gives me a considering glance, before sighing in relief. Her eyes immediately turn back towards the door, and she's suddenly looking so hopeful it makes me wince in discomfort. Of course, she expects him to visit her if he's well enough to do so. And I can't lie and say he doesn't want to. She's insecure enough to believe it and be upset over the fact. He won't be coming, though, I tell her, heart squeezing at her crestfallen expression. It's better he doesn't during the recovery. Emma's eyes instantly darken in suspicion.
I thought you said he was doing fine.
He is, I reply, lying through my teeth. It's just a precaution. Remember the healer who came to see me before? She suggested it. Emma's brows furrow in worry.
And what about you?
She asks me, genuinely concerned.
How are you doing?
I would like nothing more than to rely on my friend's strength to help me navigate my pain. But Emma doesn't need me to burden her with my issues, not when she's lying in a hospital bed. I'm always burdening people with my problems. I'm okay, I begin, immediately receiving an unconvinced glare for my efforts.
For real, Chloe, talk to me.
Emma insists, making me smile. She might not be the most approachable person, but once you've earned her trust, Emma's easily one of the most loyal friends I know. It's been difficult, I confess, though instantly feeling embarrassed at the confession. Emma's been hurt by Nate, so how can the fact that I miss him not feel like a betrayal to a human who'll never fully understand what a soulmate bond feels like? Though she's looking like the very image of understanding right now.
You can talk about him, you know,
she says softly before adding jokingly,
I'll keep the insults to myself, I promise.
I know she means it too. But she can't even begin to understand what it's like, being torn from your mate. I feel incomplete, numb one moment, and torn with anxiety the next, like I've lost a limb whose absence haunts me every waking moment to the point of pain at times. But mostly, there's an all-encompassing sadness that can easily feel like dread, like the absolute certainty that I won't make it without Nate. She wouldn't understand. And what's more, she'd worry about Harry, and with good reason. It's been difficult, but I'll be fine, I tell her. Except, I don't know if that's true. Chapter 18. In the following weeks, I kept visiting Emma at the hospital almost every day. Despite her recovery being slow, frustrating her to no end, she is making good progress, and the doctors expect her to be able to go home in about another month. It helps me being around her, giving me the motivation I need to keep away from Nate. I still miss him to the point of physical pain. But I'm feeling braver and more assured with my decision than ever. I can't go back to him after what he's done. He's changed, and I have to accept that. If only it didn't feel like it was all my fault. Like the bond wasn't what had corrupted him. Emma keeps assuring me it isn't, but I have trouble believing it.
If anything, it only revealed who he always was.
She tells me, seemingly convinced. I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse. Was I a fool, forever loving him so deeply? At home, things have been difficult, especially for those of us in the inner circle who know about Harry's bonding sickness. With him being too unwell to keep up with his usual duties, we all try to cover for him, though it's not always easy when none of us are alphas with the same effortless authority he does. But there's no other choice. Not when Harry's looking increasingly worse every day, face downright ashen now, with bluish bags under his eyes, and moments of absence where he doesn't even seem to be aware of our presence. It's getting increasingly difficult to keep this from Emma, who spends almost all our time together trying to get me to talk about Harry with more or less subtlety. I'm swimming in guilt. What am I supposed to tell her? That he barely eats and spends most of his days wincing in pain when he thinks nobody's looking.
I don't understand why he's like this.
Vivian tells the healer who comes to check on us.
Chloe's not sick as he is.
It's true. I can't say I'm doing great, but in comparison to Harry, I'm in stellar health.
The heart wants what it wants,
the healer replies.
From what you told me, Chloe's mate was being a threat to her and her loved ones. She may love him still, but her heart was resolved when she broke their bond.
She doesn't have to say any more for us to see her point. It's not the same for Harry because he doesn't want to be away from Emma. He wishes to protect her, yes, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he yearns for her presence. That's it, I declare, feeling resolved. He's going to rekindle their bond whether he wants to or not. Don't try to stop me, I add, pointing towards Vivian.
Chloe...
No, I interject, feeling fed up. He thinks he knows better than everyone else, but he's being downright...
Chloe?
Vivian cuts off.
I agree. Go. You're like a sister to him, and you're Emma's friend. He'll listen to you.
I'm stunned, speechless for a second. I was expecting her to protest and take Harry's side. But I'm quick to recover and head to Harry's room before she can change her mind. He's slumped on a couch when I arrive, eyes half closed. Harry, you can't keep doing this to yourself, I call out, kneeling beside him. It's killing you. He slowly turns to me and gives me a dazed look, which makes me wonder if he understands me at all. We're going to visit Emma and you're going to accept her as your mate, and then you're going to get better, okay? I tell him, squeezing his arm to get his attention. He slurs out something incoherent and closes his eyes with a tired sigh, head rolling to the side. I'm absolutely terrified. I try to shake him awake several times, but to no avail. Please wake up, Harry, I plead. I check his pulse on instinct, but thankfully, he's still breathing. There's just one thing left for me to do. I'm getting Emma, I tell Vivian as we cross paths while I'm rushing downstairs. Her eyes widen and she nods, watching me rush to my car. I unlock it, and am about to climb inside when a familiar voice makes me freeze in my tracks.
Hey, baby.
This is the voice that's been haunting my dreams ever since I've broken my soulmate bond. A voice which used to make me feel all kinds of joy whenever it would whisper sweet words into my ear, and then all kinds of hurt, when that same warmth dissolved into cold anger. Nate, I turn, heart in my throat. Seeing him again, right beside me, after desperately missing him for so long, is like a punch to the gut. I'm breathless, mind blank, my entire body screaming at me to go to him. He gives me a dashing smile, the kind that makes me go weak, his hazel eyes warm with love.
Come here,
he says, opening his arms. I don't know what happens, but the next thing I know, I'm sagged against him, breathing him in like it's the only thing keeping me upright. Maybe it is. I feel him scent mark me with vigor, running his wrist all over me, paying special attention to my neck to reclaim me as his. I should be annoyed, but all I feel is joy. though in the back of my mind, the image of Harry's pale skin is still present, and soon enough, I'm pushing Nate away to get into my car. I have to go. I can't do this now, I tell him. I'm expecting anger, but instead, his eyes go soft and full of concern.
What's wrong, baby? Tell me and I'll help you.
I grab his hand, pulling him. There's no time. We'll talk on the way. Come on. Nate follows after me, confusion written all over his handsome face. Harry is sick, I explain, opening the door to my car. We have to go get Emma. Nate stops dead in his tracks.
Sick?
He tells me, expression going oddly blank. Yes, I insist, pulling on his hand. Emma's his mate and they've been apart for too long. Nate's frown turns into a slow, spreading smile, and his eyes begin to sparkle in worrying interest.
Well, seems like the tables have turned.
He smirks, pulling me against him. I try to break free of his hold, confused. Can't he see how urgent this is? Nate, we need to go now. If we don't get Emma, Harry could die. I press, trying to make him understand.
Oh, we wouldn't want that.
He replies, making me breathe in relief. But then, Nate snorts and adds,
Not when I could kill him myself.
What did he just say? I frantically search his expression, but Nate looks determined and as serious as ever. I choke on my next breath, shock making my entire body tremble in horror. He means it, I realize. He really means it. But how can he... I feel faint.
Don't look at me like that, baby. I know you care about him, but you'll realize this is for the best. He's been keeping us apart, see? Banishing me from our pack. From you. He's had it coming. He should have known what it would do to me.
He tenderly caresses my cheek, on which tears have begun to fall. You can't, I protest in a weak voice I'm ashamed to hear. The others won't let you. But I've been conditioned to quiver at every one of Nate's frowns, fearing the familiar impatience beginning to taint his loving expression.
They will if I officially challenge him as alpha.
Nate interrupts himself when he notices my crumbling expression.
You only have yourself to blame, baby. You let him convince you to break our bond despite knowing what it would do to me. Can't you see it's killing me, being apart from you? You can't blame me for wanting to live, do you?
I stare at him, his crazed eyes determined, and think back on Harry's ashen expression as he passed out in front of me. Suddenly, hot, righteous anger replaces my anguish. What I see is that while Harry can barely stay awake, you're strong enough to be making cruel plans. I spit, pulling away from him. This only makes Nate laugh in excitement.
Oh, now this I have to see.
He says, grabbing me again and pulling me after him.
Our almighty alpha reduced to a useless lump all because of some dumb human bitch.
I won't let you hurt him. I protest, pulling on his hold to keep him in my place, though without success. Nate twists my arm, making me gasp in pain, and pulls me towards him.
You will, though?
He tells me.
Want to know why? Because if you do, I'll spare his precious little pet. How's that?
I gape at him, astonished at the horror spilling out of his mouth, a mouth which used to kiss me so tenderly.
Get it? Stand by me and Emma lives.
He pulls on my hair.
Go against me and I'll kill her and make Harry watch, and then I'll kill him too.
Nate whispers before pulling me into an angry kiss that makes me sick to my stomach. My eyes remain wide open in horror as I let him do what he wants to me, in the hope that it will appease him somehow. I have to do something. My gaze fall onto the tree line of the woods. And there, behind a trunk, is a small brunette, gaping at me in horror. Max. She must have heard the whole thing. I've never been so ashamed in my entire life. There's nothing like a child's innocent gaze growing scared to make you realize how dire a situation is. But then, Max's expression grows cold and determined. She gives me a little nod before dropping to the ground and transforming into her wolf form. I can only watch as she disappears into the woods.
Chapter 19. I don't know why I missed physical sensations when I was a ghost. I've been experiencing a world of hurt ever since getting my body back. The doctors have been throwing around terms like miraculous recovery and lucky to be alive. But honestly, every part of me aches in a way that feels the opposite of lucky. And I'm not just talking about my physical injuries. Chloe comes to see me most days, and I've never felt more grateful for having a friend. Without her, I would have broken down a long time ago. But the fact that it's been a month now since I've seen or spoken with Harry is slowly driving me insane. They say time heals all wounds. Well, this wound is healing much slower than the ones I got getting hit by a car. I'm pretty sure it has only grown every minute of every day we've been apart. I get that he doesn't want to be with me, okay? And I get that rejecting our bond was difficult for him because he's a wolf, and I know firsthand how busy he is. But don't I deserve at least a visit? Or a quick call? Heck, I'll take a text or even a simple like on one of my Instagram posts. But I get nothing. Well, if he thinks he's getting rid of me that easily, he's got another thing coming. First, I'm going to get physically better, and then I'll show up at his place and remind him how great of a friend I am. Yeah, we can totally be friends. I wonder what Chloe will think about that. I'm going to ask later when she comes over. She'd mentioned in passing, though I'd taken good note of it, that Harry didn't much like the idea of humans hanging around the pack because he deemed it too dangerous for them, a werewolf bite being supposedly fatal to humans. But I mean, surely he could meet me away from the pack? And surely he doesn't count himself amongst the danger. I mean, he wouldn't bite me. I need to discuss this with Chloe more. I can't wait until she arrives. By the end of the afternoon, though, there's still no sign of her. Which would be fine. Except when I try texting and calling to ask if she'll be visiting, I receive no answer. This isn't like her. She's usually very quick at getting back to me, being the absolute angel that she is. Did something happen? Is she okay? What if she got hit by a car? 'Cause that doesn't only happen to other people, I would know. However, a suspicious thought grows inside me the longer her silence stretches. What if Nate had gotten to her? The more I think about it, the more I become convinced he's the one behind my friend's absence. I have to get out of here and find Chloe before I go mad. Something happened. I'm sure of it. I manage to get up from my bed and am halfway across the room before realizing that not only will my doctors surely refuse to discharge me, but I'm also already dizzy from taking such a short walk. I want to scream in frustration. Chloe's in trouble, I know it, and I'm stuck in here useless. I sink onto the floor feeling all hope drain out of me. What can I do? Wait, what is that noise? There's a commotion in the hallway. I hear nurses screaming at each other and the sound of a cart being knocked down on the floor. I barely have time to wonder what's going on before my door bursts open, revealing a small wolf with pitch-black fur. Its eyes meet mine, and I instantly know this is no ordinary wolf. It looks too alert and intelligent, and besides, I'm sure I've seen it before. This is one of the kids from Harry's pack. "Hello, Max," I tell the wolf. She looks somewhat pleased about being recognized, though not for long, as a nurse follows into my room looking panicked. "Emma, have you seen a... What are you doing on the ground?" she exclaims upon finding me out of bed. "Sorry about the dog." Oh no, the nurse looks like she wants to take Max away. "She's mine." I instantly jump in. "Yours?" The nurse looks surprised. "That's why it ran in here then. But we don't allow animals in here though, Emma." I conjure up a sweet, innocent expression. "I'll ask a friend to come pick her up now. But can she please remain here in the meantime? I haven't seen her in so long. She's not a very big fan of strangers." The nurse agrees a little begrudgingly and leaves me alone with Max. As soon as the door shuts, I turn to her, expecting to be looking at black fur and sharp teeth. But instead, I find myself staring at the small silhouette of a 10-year-old girl who's not wearing clothes. "Max, what are you doing here?" I exclaim, looking around for an extra nightgown and throwing it at her. Did something happen? If the girl is surprised hearing me blurt out her name, she doesn't show it.
"So you're Emma,"
she says, eyeing me critically.
"I thought you'd be prettier."
I'm stunned, speechless for a second. "Well, excuse me, I was in a car accident," I protest, feeling vexed. Max shrugs, indifferent to my plight.
"Whatever. We need to get out of here."
she tells me, pulling at my arm. She's got a strong grip for a kid, but that's not enough to get me out of bed. I can't walk, I explain when she gives me a furious look. Car accident, remember?
But you have to come.
Max growls, pulling at my arm again. I'm worried she's gonna pull my shoulder. Believe me, kid, I'd like nothing more than getting out of here. The food's horrible. But 3 steps out of bed is all I can do right now. Hey, don't blame me. Blame Nate. I add as Max looks more and more ready to smack me. Hearing that name, her expression sombers.
That's why you have to come.
She insists.
Because of Nate.
I suddenly remember what had been distressing me before Max's arrival. Did he do something to Chloe? I ask, heartbeat picking when Max's expression is all the answer I need. I knew it. That's why she hasn't been visiting me.
He's keeping her prisoner at home,
Max explains.
He says he's gonna kill everyone because he loves her.
He's gonna kill everyone out of love? The dude's even crazier than I thought. Chloe must be devastated. Harry will stop him, Max, I tell her reassuringly. It's gonna be... I interrupt myself when I see Max shaking her head vehemently.
Harry can't stop Nate. He's sleeping.
I'm confused again. Well, wake him up then. I scoff, shrugging my shoulders. Sleeping at a time like this? Seriously, Harry. I'm suddenly at the receiving end of the most disdainful look I've ever seen in my life.
What do you think I'm here for, stupid?
The girl says, crossing her arms.
I need you to come with me to do just that.
A lot of questions erupt into my mind, quickly replaced by a sharp sense of dread. You need me to wake him? I ask, fearing the answer. Max nods emphatically, and my stomach plummets like it's made of lead. He's sick, isn't he? I close my eyes anxiously. Because of the bond? But Chloe said she lied to me?
You really are an idiot.
Max grunts, interrupting my panicked musings.
Harry is Chloe's alpha, remember. Whatever he says goes.
My eyes snap open, distress suddenly replaced with white-hot anger. You mean he told her to lie? I exclaim, beyond furious. That lying, controlling jerk. How dare he try to nobly hide his suffering from me? I'm going to kill him! I shriek, getting out of bed. I make it 5 steps before falling onto the ground.
That was sad, man.
Max says with a small frown. I glance at her as I try to get back on my feet to no avail. Little help here? Max manages to pull me up, but it quickly becomes apparent that despite her enhanced strength, there's simply no way for us to sneak out of the hospital unnoticed. I'll ask my doctors to release me, at least for a little while. I strategize out loud, desperately trying to convince myself. They might let me go, right? They'll understand.
Even if they did let you out,
Max says, unimpressed.
There's no way we can get you past Nate when you can't even walk.
I hadn't thought about that. Of course, Nate isn't going to just let me in to see Harry. He must know he's sick, hence the aggressive takeover. It's not like he'd stand a chance if Harry was well. But he isn't, and it's all my fault. I really try not to show my despair for Max's sake, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. My best friend is in danger. Harry's in danger. He's been suffering all this time and he didn't say a thing.
I've got it.
Max interrupts my thoughts, giving me a determined look.
I know what we're going to do.
I want to ask her what exactly, but she's already busy grabbing my wrist and raising it towards her mouth. What are you doing? I ask, curious.
Turning you, of course.
Max replies with a deadpan look. Turn me? Into a... I thought humans rarely survived the bite. I say, slightly panicked.
Yeah, but you will, though.
The kid replies with a carefree shrug.
'Cause you're Harry's mate.
It hits me that I've somehow become the only person who can save an entire pack of people, including the love of my life, from a crazy werewolf. And I only have a mere 10-year-old to help me. I was told I was almost guaranteed to die. I remind Max while considering her plan. If by some miracle I did survive the bite and became a wolf, not only would I be able to heal quickly and escape from here, I could also wake Harry. And after he'd get rid of Nate, we could... I can't get my hopes up. The chances of that happening are alarmingly low. I'm probably going to die. I think I'm hyperventilating. I'm definitely going to die, aren't I? There's no way this can work. But if we don't try...
I won't force you, lady.
Max tells me with pleading eyes.
But if we don't manage to get you back home, Harry is going to die and Nate is going to take over.
My heart clenches in pain. No, I can't let that happen. Do it! I give the girl my arm, feeling resolute.
Really?
She asks, eyes wide like this is too good to be true. I nod. When it comes down to it, there are no other option. It's either this or losing Harry. There's no way I'm going to sit by and let that happen. I watch as Max's mouth moves towards my skin. Will it hurt? I ask in a small voice.
Like a bitch,
she replies. And then her teeth sink into my skin and I'm thrown into a world of pain like nothing I've ever experienced before. Chapter 20. I immediately know something's different before even opening my eyes. I'm assaulted by overwhelming sounds of footsteps, voices, machines. It's all so loud I feel like my head's about to explode. However, that is nothing compared to the million different smells I'm suddenly picking up, making me nauseous. I open my eyes and jump up before thinking about my injuries, but there's no pain anymore. My bones don't hurt. My limbs don't pull.
Wow,
Max says, looking taller than she did before.
I can't believe that worked.
I want to snap at her that this was all her idea, but instead of words, I end up producing a low growl. And this is when it hits me that instead of feet, I now have paws.
Calm down,
Max says, raising her hands appeasingly. She slowly comes towards me and gives me a pat on the head. I'd hate it, except it kind of helps. Being close to her helps. She smells young and fresh like dewy grass bathed in sunlight, something full of hope and precious that needs to be protected. I can't explain why it feels that way. It just does.
Let's go,
Max says, showing me towards the door.
I'll say you're my dog. Come on.
We do get a couple of strange looks on our way out of the hospital, and Max receives a comment or two about animals being prohibited. But a low growl from me always does the trick at getting people off our backs, and soon enough, we're in the parking lot outside. I can't believe that worked. I can't believe turning me into a wolf worked. I can't believe I'm walking on 4 different legs.
I'll turn back once we get to the woods so we can run home,
Max tells me with the first, childlike grin I've seen her make since arriving earlier.
It'll be quicker like that. You'll see, you're going to be able to run super fast.
I make no objections and follow her until we're hidden from views amongst the trees without another soul in sight. Once Max is turned, we begin to run across the forest with a speed I've never achieved before in my life. As I weave through trees, I can hear the faint rustling of leaves and the whisper of the wind as it dances through the branches, while detecting the earthy musk of the soil beneath my feet, the scent of pine needles, and the distant fragrance of a nearby stream. Every blade of grass, every fallen leaf, and every twist in the path seem to be etched into my vision. It's too much, and suddenly a new wave of nausea hits me, and I'm forced to interrupt my run. Everything's becoming blurry. Max is beside me in an instant, nuzzling my neck. It's comforting, especially as this helps me focus on her youthful smell. I don't know how, but her voice whispers in my head.
You'll turn back when we reach the house. It won't feel as overwhelming when you're human again.
A sense of urgency laces her comforting words, and a new swell of protectiveness surges within me. Soon enough, we reach Harry's house, which I discern beyond the trees. Max leads me to a small shack near the house, before letting me know that is now time for me to be human again. I'm unsure how to proceed, but find that it comes naturally to me, though naturally doesn't mean smoothly or without pain. Is it always this horrible? I groan, standing up on 2 shaky human limbs. Max shrugs. I take it as a yes.
Here,
she tells me, opening a cupboard.
We keep a stash of clothes here for those that don't like walking inside the house naked when they get back from the forest.
I grab a matching pair of black leggings and a tank top, quickly putting everything on. I have trouble executing that simple task. I notice my fingers are shaking, and a sharp pain begins to grow behind my eyes. But that's nothing compared to the sudden sense of loneliness that surges within me, choking me like a punch to the stomach.
Are you okay?
Max asks, giving me a somewhat concerned look.
You've gone really pale.
I'm not sure, I reply, grinding my teeth. Everything hurts. I begin to cry, wondering if it always feels like this to turn back. Max is watching me like one would a strange science experiment. There's a mix of fascination and detachment.
I know,
she suddenly exclaims.
It's because of your broken bond. Now that you're a wolf too, you can feel it.
I groan while holding back another wave of nausea. Does this mean Harry's been feeling like this for months?
Well, at first he seemed somewhat uncomfortable,
Max tells me with a wince.
but it got worse with time.
Worse than this? I feel awful. There's a weight on my chest that has me convinced I'll never inhale enough oxygen ever again, and a sense of pure dread envelops my mind. Only the thought of Harry makes me feel a little bit better, because the sharp pain I'm experiencing has found its source. Being away from him hurts every single inch of my body, and suddenly, my mind becomes obsessed with the single-minded need to be near him.
Where are you going?
Max grabs my arm.
You can't just barge in there. Nate will stop you.
I take a breath, trying to keep my head straight. She's right. We haven't come all this way to fail now when we're so close. I want to ask Max questions and strategize, but for some reason, the next words to come out of my mouth are, Max, if I don't find Harry right this second, I will die. She rolls her eyes at me, unimpressed.
No, you won't. It took him a month to be near death. You have at least a good hour.
Only the thought of Harry being in so much pain for an entire month stops me from smacking her in annoyance.
I'll create a distraction downstairs while you climb up inside his room.
Max decides.
You know where it is, right?
I frown in hesitation. Yes, but Max, from what you've told me Nate's unhinged, I can't just let you... She's looking at me like I'm an idiot again.
I can handle Nate. Go.
And seeing me hesitate some more, she adds,
Look, the sooner Harry wakes up to stop him, the better. Seriously, go.
I take one last look at her, impressed with how brave she is for a kid, and head towards the back of the house, under Harry's bedroom window. Chapter 21. The night air becomes crisp as the sun sets. I lift my gaze to the third-floor window of Harry's room as Nate's commanding snarl echoes through the grounds. There's no time to waste. For a human, the climb would be daunting, perilous even, but I guess I'm not human anymore, am I? Taking a deep breath, I step toward the house, my fingers finding purchase on the rough texture of the brick. As I begin my ascent, the world narrows to the sounds of the night, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, the gentle rustling of leaves, and the muffled sounds of confrontation below. Bricks wobble under my grasp, and ivy that seemed sturdy tears away unexpectedly. But while my breath catches and adrenaline surges, each handhold and foothold brings me closer to Harry, and so, my resolve does not waver. Besides, I have newfound strength, and so I end up bursting inside his bedroom more quickly than I thought I would. I land on the floor, feeling a mix of bewilderment at having succeeded, and fear at what's about to unfold. Until I'm enveloped with an intoxicating woodsy scent that immediately short-circuits every rational thought in my brain. Notes of the wild forest after a storm. The clean, sharp tang of rain on leaves, and something deeper. An elemental musk that speaks directly to the primal part of my brain. I become dizzy, though not with pain as before. It's rather like an exquisite sort of high, seductive and all-consuming, that leaves me panting. And I'd probably have forgotten the urgency of the situation if, stepping closer towards its source, I hadn't picked up the sterile tang of sickness weakening the otherwise intoxicating scent. My eyes fall onto Harry, who's lying motionless on his bed. It reminds me of all the different times I'd watched him while I was a ghost. He'd always look peaceful in his sleep, beautifully bathed in the moonlight. But now, his slumber feels unnatural. Beyond his pale skin and labored breathing, I'm troubled by his pained expression, which seems to indicate he's enduring rather than resting. I hurry by his side and bury my nose in his neck, overwhelmed by a torrent of contrasting feelings as I grab onto his hand. There's the joy of being near him, finally being able to touch him. But there's also pain, his and mine combined. Wake up. Please wake up, Harry. I'm sobbing into his skin, trying to shake him awake to no avail. I've come all this way only to realize I'm utterly powerless. Harry's the one that broke our bond, and he's the one that has to repair it. But how can he when he doesn't even seem aware of my presence? Desperation fills my heart. I feel him slipping away. I know I'll follow soon after and try to make my peace with that. I was lucky enough to see him one last time. I bring our foreheads together, wishing with all my heart to be able to take his pain away, so he'd be left with only my love for him. I wish it so ardently that it's starting to feel like it's coming true. A sharp pain that isn't mine, mixed with heartbreaking loneliness, pours into my skin. I choke on my next breath. I open my eyes to the same room where Harry and I had shared our first kiss, our shared dream space or whatever it is. I look around in confusion, but my eyes quickly settle on Harry, who I'm amazed to see awake. My heart skips a beat. Meeting his eyes again, it feels too good to be true.
Emma.
He looks dazed and confused, but hearing his voice sends a shiver down my spine. I grab onto his face, hoping to communicate the urgency of our situation. You've got to rekindle our bond, I implore, watching his gray eyes dull.
No, Emma, I can't risk your life.
Harry, please, if you don't, you'll die. His fingers tenderly graze my cheek.
I'd rather it be me than you,
he says with a soft smile. My breath catches as I throw my arms around him. I want to assure him everything will be fine, declare my undying love, and shake him in anger all at the same time. But here in this space, I can feel all the weight of his conflicting emotions, his worry, and his resolve to protect me. He's afraid for me, I realize. You don't have to worry anymore, I tell him, throwing my arms around his neck. Max turned me. I'll be safe. But I realize he doesn't seem to understand what I'm telling him. There's only fierce determination to keep me safe in his mind. Fear. And guilt? I try to focus on that guilt, which seems important. What could he be feeling guilty about? I hold on to the thought with as much strength as I can, despite how terrible it makes me feel, for it's like my own now. Something around us shifts, our surroundings mending with the ones of another bedroom that looks nothing like the one we'd been in. I shift my gaze from Harry with some difficulty to stare at the bed where a figure lies. A blonde woman I've never seen. But who has Harry's eyes? Is this your mom? I ask. He doesn't have to reply, I know it is. She looks pale and thin, obviously sick. Her eyes are empty and lost.
I don't understand why she isn't recovering.
A voice I don't recognize echoes in my mind.
You'd said she'd be fine if she got through the birth.
Humans don't normally conceive shifter children.
Another voice replies. This one I do recognize. It sounds like the healer who'd come to check on Chloe.
She lost a lot of strength delivering the child, and her health never fully recovered.
My heart sinks.
Besides,
the healer sighs.
It's not just a physical matter. For a mother to be kept away from her child like that.
What are you saying?
The man asks.
I'm saying that her mind is just as broken as her body. It's given up.
Tears begin to stream down my face as I experience Harry's guilt upon hearing those words when he'd been no more than a child, as intensely as if it were my own. Harry, it wasn't your fault. You didn't kill your mother, okay? I tell him, taking his face into my hands, though he won't meet my gaze. If anything, what killed her was being away from you. Just like it would kill me to lose you. I despair when loneliness and sorrow only fill my mind more. His emotions are so raw it's difficult to bear them. How can I reach him? But then I realize that if I can feel his emotions, then maybe that means he can feel mine in return. So instead of telling him, I try to pour all of my fear and need into our bond. How afraid I am for him, just as terrified of losing him as he is of losing me. How much, in such a short time, I've come to need him to feel whole. How much I love him. Hesitation, hope, and then something akin to adoration ebbs and flows across his features. Do it, I insist, pulling him towards me. Do it now, Harry. I'm afraid I'm too late. I feel myself being torn away as his next words echo from further and further away. But then, something clicks into place. Back inside his bedroom, I blink awake to the press of his body underneath mine. Though all of that feels secondary now that a sort of dual consciousness is awakening within me, Harry's very soul blooming against mine while he slowly comes back to his senses. His eyes flutter open, dazed and heavy with sleep for a second, before settling on me. You're awake, I sigh, tearfully in relief. There's the soft look on his face I've come to adore. But then his pupils dilate, and his eyes turn gold. Harry? I ask somewhat nervously, feeling alarmingly like prey about to be consumed. Are you all right? In one swift movement, Harry topples me down on his bed, pinning my arms above my head. I stare at him in shock, my mind going pleasantly blank as I try to wiggle out of his grasp only to find myself restrained by his hold. He looks angry to the point where I should probably be terrified, except there's a reason why I always enjoyed taunting him. His anger always made me feel like the center of his universe, if only for brief, addictive moments. Though it never did as intensely as it does now. His emotions echo in the back of my mind, and his scent spikes up in a way that makes me want to pull him against me. I can't, though, being restrained and all. So I end up emitting an embarrassingly needy whine instead, which seems to make Harry go completely insane because the next thing I know, he's sinking his teeth into my neck and my body surges with a pleasure so intense everything goes black for a second. I think I might have screamed, although I'm not sure. It's too much. I'm shaking with want. I need more, but I can't breathe or move, unable to conjure any words to ask for it. Harry understands me perfectly, though. He's nipping at my bruised skin with ferocity, emitting low growls that sound nothing human. We don't speak, but his voice rings in my head nonetheless, a litany of possessive thoughts mixed with crazed desire. But mostly there is all-encompassing love that brings me to tears when Harry captures my lips in a soaring, breathtaking kiss. My hands pull at his hair. His are roaming all over my body. Our eyes meet, and then Harry suddenly pulls away to stare at me in horror.
Who turned you?
He growls, sounding absolutely murderous. His words take a second to compute because my mind is more focused on the offensive fact that he stopped kissing me. What? Who cares? I exclaim as I register the angry snarl that has begun to twist his features. Did you like me better before? I ask, feeling very insecure. Harry's emotions feel wild and aggressive against my own more fragile ones. Trying to make sense of them makes me dizzy, though possessiveness seems to overweight the rest, consuming in its intensity. He's now running his wrists along different parts of my body, jaw clenched. What are you doing? I ask in a small voice. I realize his scent is enveloping me, clouding my mind pleasantly. I feel warm, safe, and loved, but the tensed scowl twisting his features troubles me. I try to catch his attention by grabbing onto his hand. He pins my arms back down with a low growl.
Don't test me right now, sweetheart.
He groans, voice strained.
I can't.
I don't even have to think twice about baring my neck to him to give him better access. It just happens like somebody else has taken control of my body. Harry's posture relaxes remarkably at the gesture, satisfaction radiating through our bond at my compliance.
Sorry.
He mumbles after a short while, obviously trying to get his labored breathing under control.
I must be scaring you. I'm sorry, Emma.
His forehead sags against my shoulder, where he remains still, breathing me in. I run my fingers through his hair. I don't mind. I confess, more shy than I'd like. I like wearing your scent. It feels, I want to say good, but the word seems both too bold and like an understatement. His contentment pours so strongly through our bond, though, that I can't help but add, you can do whatever you want to me, you know? I'm yours. Harry's sharp pleasure surges through our connection, leaving me breathless.
Please don't say things like that, darling. I'm trying to be good.
He complains, pulling me back into another demanding kiss. I'm losing myself in the feel of his lips against mine, his body against mine, his very soul against mine. I only realize my fingers have begun to transform when the metallic tinge of blood erupts into the air after I raked my nails across his back. I freeze, shocked. I'm sorry, I exclaim, eyes going wide. Harry looks sincerely confused. For hurting you, I feel the need to add.
You're sorry for...
Harry pulls back suddenly, looking affronted.
If anyone should feel sorry here, it's me. You should never have accepted the turn, Emma. You could have died.
He scolds, though softly caressing my cheek at the same time. Says the guy who was practically catatonic when I arrived. I scoff, hitting his arm.
You didn't answer me before.
Harry says like he's only just remembered that detail.
Who did this to you? I'll kill them.
I roll my eyes. No, you won't. It was Max, and we both know she's your favorite.
Max?
Harry looks torn.
Why would Max do this?
Good question. So good, in fact, that I'm conveniently reminded of all the events that have led me to become a werewolf in the first place. Which I'd kind of forgotten about for a minute there. Oh my God, Harry, we don't have time for this, I exclaim, trying to wiggle out of his grasp, which only makes him smirk at my utter failure. You have to go stop Nate. Harry, who's back to nuzzling my neck with renewed intensity, sounds uninterested by this piece of news.
Nate?
He asks like he's forgotten who this is. To be fair, I kind of forget too when I feel his teeth graze my skin. But being the pillar of strength that I am, I manage to refocus after a bit. He wants to kill you. Well, you and everyone else. Or maybe it's just you? I don't know. Max wasn't very clear on that. Anyway, we have to go now. Harry groans as I try to push him off of me.
Do we?
He asks, sounding incredibly unconvinced.
Really?
I can't believe I'm being the responsible one here. Yes, really, I explain, running my fingers down his back, which feels smooth. The scratches I'd made already healed. Max was terrified he was going to replace you as Alpha. Everybody thinks you're done for, and Nate has gone batshit crazy.
Fine.
Harry sighs, reluctantly removing himself.
Let's make this quick.
He grabs my hand and helps me to my feet, pulling me after him, looking the very definition of pissed.
Chapter 22. Chloe's point of view. Nate is pacing around the living room like a trapped feral beast. And while I see him scream and rant and screech in anger, while I recognize his features, my mind doesn't seem to make the correlation between this monster and the man I used to love. There's a burning sensation in my jaw and an acrid metallic taste in my mouth. Something's dripping along my chin.
Chloe, are you okay?
Max whispers to me, from where she's crouched in the corner of the dining room. I want to answer her, but the words won't come out. My body is lifeless and still. Frozen. Around the dining room, every member of our pack is seated around the table, warily watching Nate like one would a dangerous criminal, fear and horror blatant in all of their eyes. I hate that it hurts me to see so much fear directed at Nate. I hate that I feel like I've failed him, somehow. There is a part of me that wants to defend him still, and it fills me with shame.
How many more times do I have to ask, Vivian?
Nate slams his hand next to her on the dining table.
Get me Harry now.
Vivian doesn't so much as flinch, though, beside her. Jake begins to growl. He gets up to face Nate, forcing him to back away.
And how many times do we have to tell you? He's not here.
Nate scowls slightly but knows better than to aggravate Jake further.
You can't hide him from me forever. Law's the law,
he calmly reminds. Vivian and Jake exchange one of their pointed looks. I wonder if they have a plan. Is there any way to stop Nate from challenging Harry? It would seem too good to be true. Like he said, the law is technically on his side. If Nate wants to challenge Harry for his title, then that is his right. What if I leave with you? I ask, tentatively. I'll rekindle our bond and we'll leave together. I see a glimpse of hesitation in Nate's eyes, and for a moment hope stirs within me. This is all to win me back after all. But if I could only prove to him that there's no need for all that?
No, Chloe.
Jake interferes, looking tense.
We won't let you alone with him.
See?
Nate snaps, clenching his fists again.
They'd never leave us be. I have to become the alpha. For us.
He turns toward Vivian again.
Stop making excuses!
He snaps, baring his teeth.
I know he's here and you can't stop me from fighting him.
Well, all right then.
A voice interrupts.
Shall we?
A heavy silence descends upon the room. Every member of our pack feels Harry's presence before even having to confirm it with our eyes, an instinctual recognition of leadership. He is indeed here, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed and face impassive, quiet confidence emanating from him in waves. Nate is frozen in place, paling under Harry's gaze. He visibly shrinks as our alpha's presence descends upon the entire room, demanding submission. My shoulders hunch instinctively, just like everyone else's, though. A sense of calm comes with our compliance. I know I'm not the only one now feeling safe and resolved. It's like we are all united once more.
Harry!
Nate stammers, anger quickly morphing into visible fear.
Nate.
Harry looks perfectly indifferent to his presence. I suppose Nate doesn't even register as a threat. It's too obvious who holds the power here. As Nate falters, the resolve in his challenge waning under the force of Harry's gaze, I feel a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that the pack will remain under Harry's protection, and sorrow for Nate, for our future.
If you're not gonna fight me, then leave.
Harry tells Nate, who looks about ready to make a run for it. That is when a small figure appears by Harry's side, bare feet and dressed all in black. It takes me a second to recognize Emma, not just because of the overwhelming situation, but because there's something different about her in the way she stands and moves. I can't quite put my finger on it, though.
Chloe,
She exclaims when our eyes meet. Her usually blue ones turn to gold, making me gasp in shock. I can't believe what I'm seeing. But then, I realize there is no trace of injury left on her body, save for a deep purple mark on her neck.
You?
Nate exclaims in a mix of anger and surprise as he recognizes my friend.
Don't look at her.
Harry growls, moving in front of Emma, making her roll her eyes.
Who's that?
Jack whispers to Vivian, who shrugs in confusion.
Emma.
Max jumps up from her corner, extending her arms.
Max.
Emma moves from behind Harry to reach for the child, but as she's about to pass Nate, he seizes her by the neck and pulls her against him, giving me a desperate glance.
Chloe,
He says to me.
rekindle our bond now or I'll...
Emma violently elbows him in the stomach, effectively shutting him up.
Are you serious?
She says, giving Nate a murderous look. She grabs him by the back of the head, then punches him in the stomach again, making him groan.
Emma,
Harry protests half-heartedly.
we agreed, no physical violence.
Yeah, well, I lied.
Emma begins to kick Nate, making both of us wince.
You know, kind of like when you said you were going to be fine after breaking our bond, but then you almost died.
I take it you're still angry then?
Shut up, Harry.
Damn.
Jake mutters, impressed. Emma sits on Nate's back, locking his arm with one hand and pressing his face to the ground with the other.
That hurts.
He protests with a wince.
You know what else hurts? Getting hit by a car.
That wasn't my fault. Chloe, tell her.
Emma smashes his head back down.
Leave Chloe alone.
I'm touched by her anger on my behalf, but also can't help but feel sorry for Nate despite everything. Let him go, Emma, I ask, pleadingly. He'll leave us alone. Right, Nate? He gives me a pained look before begrudgingly nodding.
Fine.
Emma sighs, moving away from Nate, though keeping a foot on his head to stop him from getting up.
Anyone else wants to get a punch in before he goes?
Jake immediately raises his hand, followed by Max and eventually Vivian.
You too?
Harry asks her, surprised.
He deserves it.
Guys, I protest in a weak voice. I give Emma a pleading glance which makes her frown at me. But she eventually removes her foot from Nate.
Fine. No extra punches then. Sorry, y'all.
Seriously, who is that girl?
Jake asks Harry.
She's my mate.
He replies, fondly, earning himself a couple of gasps from all over the room.
Your mate?
Jake's eyes go wide.
But she's cool and fun and you're, well, not.
Emma laughs.
I thought you were a human.
Vivian asks her curiously.
About that?
Harry turns towards Max and gives her a stern look, beckoning her to come closer. The kid doesn't look very impressed, though.
I'm not sorry.
She says, crossing her arms.
I saved your life.
She's right. Really, you should be thanking her.
Wait, so Max turned you?
Nate asks, sounding genuinely curious.
Why are you still here?
Right.
Nate looks slightly hesitant for a moment, before turning towards me.
You coming?
He gives me a pleading look, and, instinctively, I'm tempted to get up and follow him. But then, Emma's worried eyes meet mine, and I end up shaking my head, throat feeling tight. I watch my mate exit the room with his head hanging low. Right before disappearing behind a corner, he glances back at me, quickly gesturing a number with his hand. That means he'll be waiting for me at our spot in the woods later today. I know I shouldn't, but I can't refuse him a goodbye. I nod briefly. I'll be seeing him by evening. One last time, I promise myself.
Epilogue. 2 months later. Terror runs through my veins, choking all the air out of my lungs. No, 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 I cry, running my hands over Harry's cold, lifeless body. Don't leave me. Wake up. I desperately try to shake him awake, knowing it's no use. My heart plummets. He's dead. My mate is dead. What am I going to...
Emma.
A voice calls to me from far away.
Darling.
My eyes snap open to reveal Harry's worried frown above me. He's here? Alive? Relief floods through me, though my heart still pounds uncomfortably in my chest.
It was just a nightmare.
Harry says, pulling me into his arms.
You're safe, Emma. I'm here.
His worry and guilt flow through our bond, mixing poorly with the despair I'm sure he can feel right back. He runs his fingers through my hair, warm and patient as I do my best to hold back my tears. Face pressed against his bare chest, I can hear the strong beat of his heart soothing me softly. You're alive. I breathe out in relief after a couple of minutes. I thought... Harry slightly tenses against me.
You saved me.
He firmly reminds me, taking my face into his hands.
You don't have to worry about me anymore.
He gently kisses my forehead before laying me back down on our bed with careful care. He remains propped up on an elbow, watching me intently while shielding me with his body, which I begin to enjoy feeling against my own. Though not yet enough to remove the images of him near death from my mind. I almost lost you, I murmur, soaking every detail of his face, from the curve of his brows to the sharp edge of his jawline, with the half-formed thought that looking away could mean losing him forever.
You're not gonna lose me, sweetheart.
Harry frowns, bringing my hands to his lips.
I'm not going anywhere.
You say that, but... I cut myself off. I was about to remind him that it's been weeks, and yet he's still recuperating from the effect of our previously broken bond. But I know pointing it out would only make him feel guilty. According to the healer, our bond needs time to recover, the severance, however brief, having taken a toll on both Harry and I. Though, if our past separation still affects Harry physically, it is mentally that I'm still haunted by what had taken place. I've been plagued with nightmares ever since we reunited and become ridden with anxiety whenever Harry and I have to be apart longer than 10 minutes, though it has very rarely happened in the past few weeks. We spend most of our time together alone in a perpetual state of undress. I can't get enough of the feel of his skin against mine. It feels almost too damningly good when we're together, making the mere thought of being apart unbearable.
Then let's never be apart again.
Harry mumbles, nibbling my neck. Intoxicating desire has begun to cloud his mind, just like it always does now when we touch for longer than a minute or two. A side effect the healer had assured us would stabilize in time. Harry presses his body against mine, arousal all the more obvious.
I think I need to have you again, Emma.
He whispers against my ear, making me shiver. Are you asking for permission? I laugh, wrapping my arms around his shoulders and pulling him into a kiss. He feels guilty because I was crying a second ago, though all his thoughts quickly evaporate behind mind-numbing pleasure, his and mine combined. Hours later, when he's fallen back asleep with his arms around me, my thoughts drift to Chloe, whose bravery I'm even more in awe of, now that I understand what a bond feels like. I don't know how she's managed to break her own and survive. I don't think I could have managed it. I fall asleep to this naive thought, unaware of the terrible revelation that would soon come to plague our pack. Chloe's struggles with Nate were only beginning, and as I laid next to the man I love, hoping we'd be safe from now on, she was currently busy making a life-threatening decision that would affect us all forever.
An hour later. Chloe's point of view. The car pulls up in front of a small manor, built onto large grounds at the very center of the city. It's like a small oasis amongst the desert of concrete. My wolf is slightly appeased by the more quiet and natural haven, though not by much. It knows we're essentially walking right into the lion's den, so to speak.
Are you ready?
Cromwell asks, extending his hand to help me out of the car. I hesitate for only the briefest moment. Am I crazy for doing this? What will the rest of the pack say? It's best I don't think too much about it for now. There's no other choice, I remind myself. This deal is the only solution I could think of to cheat death. And if I don't take it, Nate will kill me within the year. Yes, I murmur, taking Cromwell's hand. The vampire pulls a dark cloak over my head.
Then let's go meet your future husband.
He tells me, guiding me towards the house.
Thank you for watching. To watch the sequel to Haunted Love, click on the thumbnail on your screen. Before you go, please consider leaving a like and subscribe.